Standing at my brother's wedding reception, I heard Dad's voice carrying across the garden as he chatted with his golf buddies. Casey. She works security at some office building downtown. Nothing special. The dismissive tone cut deep, but I kept my professional smile adjusting the small earpiece hidden beneath my hair. In 12 hours, his words would haunt him, because tomorrow morning every news channel in America would broadcast my face as the federal agent who just prevented the largest domestic terror attack in U.S. history. The string quartet played softly as twilight settled over the Riverside Country Club, and I watched my brother Marcus spin his new bride Jennifer across the dance floor. Their happiness radiated through the garden reception, drawing warm smiles from 200 guests. I stood near the dessert table, my bridesmaid dress feeling like a costume that didn't quite fit who I really was. There she is, Richard's daughter. I heard Mr. Blackwood say to my father. They stood 15 feet away, holding Scotch glasses, completely unaware I could hear every word. Didn't she follow in your footsteps? Join the force. My father's laugh carried that particular note of disappointment I'd grown accustomed to over the years. No, that's Marcus, my son, the groom. He's an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, very successful. Casey, well, he gestured vaguely in my direction. She does security work. Checks badges at some office building downtown. Stratton Industries, I think. Ah, Mr. Blackwood responded with that polite tone people use when they're trying not to sound judgmental. Well, someone has to do those jobs right. I suppose, Dad agreed, taking a long sip of his scotch. I tried to get her into the police academy properly, but she barely made it through and then quit after graduation. Said she wanted to explore other options. Now, look where she ended up. I turned away, pretending to study the wedding cake, while my fingers instinctively checked the concealed earpiece beneath my carefully styled hair. Richard Morrison retired. Chief of police had no idea his disappointment of a daughter had spent the last 2 years embedded in one of the most dangerous undercover operations in recent federal history. The earpiece crackled to life with Agent Martinez's voice barely audible. Phoenix, this is Control. Priority update when you're clear. I glanced around the reception. Marcus was posing for photos with Jennifer's family, his 1,000-watt smile perfectly positioned for the photographer. Our mother, Grace, chatted with her sister near the bar, occasionally shooting worried glances in my direction. She'd always sensed something wasn't right with my security job story, but never pressed. Making my way inside the country club, I found a quiet corner in the ladies' lounge and activated my secure phone. The screen immediately filled with urgent alerts from my team at the Department of Homeland Security. Martinez, I whispered. What's the situation? The timelines changed, Phoenix. His voice was tense, more strained than I'd heard in our 2 years working together. Intelligence intercepted communications an hour ago. The cell is accelerating their plans. We're looking at 12 hours, not 30 days. My blood ran cold. For 2 years, I'd been Casey Morrison, underachieving security guard at Stratton Industries. In reality, I was Agent Phoenix, part of an elite task force, investigating domestic terror threats against critical infrastructure. Stratton Industries managed power grid systems for 3 major metropolitan areas. If the terror cell succeeded, they could plunge 30 million Americans into darkness while simultaneously launching cyber attacks that would cripple financial systems across the country. Are you certain, Alder? I asked, already knowing the answer. Confirmed by 3 sources. They're mobilizing tonight. The attack happens at dawn. Through the window, I could see the reception continuing in full swing. My cousin Emma was catching the bouquet while everyone cheered. My father stood with his police buddies, probably sharing stories about his glory days on the force and lamenting how his daughter couldn't hack it. I'll need to leave the reception early, I said. Negative, Phoenix. Maintain cover for now. We're repositioning assets. Check your secure drops in 2 hours. And Casey. Martinez paused. This is it. Everything we've worked for comes down to the next 12 hours. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the mirror. The bridesmaid dress, the careful makeup, the styled hair, all of it was just another cover. Beneath it was someone my family couldn't imagine, someone who'd graduated at the top of her federal training class, spoke 4 languages, and had prevented 2 terrorist incidents in the past year alone. But they'd never know any of that. Returning to the reception, I found myself cornered by Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, who'd made a career out of other people's business. "Casey, darling," she cooed, her voice already thick with champagne. "Such a beautiful wedding. Maybe you'll be next. Though I suppose you'd need to meet someone first. It must be hard with your work schedule. Night shifts at a security desk don't leave much time for dating, do they?" "I manage," I replied evenly. "Well, you could try online dating. I know the job market is tough, but maybe if you went back to school, got a proper degree, Marcus could probably help you get an internship at his firm. You can't work security forever." I smiled, thinking of the 2 master's degrees I'd earned while undercover, the commendations locked in a safe at headquarters, the federal prosecutors who regularly sought my expertise on domestic terror cases. "I'll think about it, Aunt Patricia." She patted my arm condescendingly. "That's a good girl. You know, your father worries about you. He mentioned you're still renting that tiny apartment downtown. At your age, you should be thinking about buying property, building a future." My phone vibrated, another update from my team. Surveillance had identified 3 more members of the cell. The attack was definitely moving forward. "Excuse me," I said. "I need to check something." I walked toward the parking lot, ostensibly to get something from my car, but really to review the intelligence updates. The terror cell we'd been tracking for 2 years was more sophisticated than we'd initially believed. They'd recruited insiders at multiple infrastructure points, planning coordinated strikes that would cascade into nationwide chaos. And at the center of it all was my supposed supervisor at Stratton Industries, a man named David Chen, who everyone believed was my boss in the security department. The twisted irony wasn't lost on me. While my father told everyone I was a failed cop working as a rent-a-cop, I was actually Chen's handler, feeding information to federal authorities about his connections to the terror network. Every pathetic night shift I worked was another piece of the puzzle, another step closer to preventing catastrophe. My secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message: "Package arriving at wedding. Maintain natural appearance." I looked up to see a familiar figure entering the reception. David Chen himself, dressed in an expensive suit, shaking hands with Marcus. My spine stiffened. This wasn't a coincidence. "Casey." Marcus waved me over. "Come meet one of our newest clients." I walked over, my expression carefully neutral, as my brother introduced me to the man I'd been investigating for 2 years. "David Chen." He extended his hand. "I heard you work at Stratton. Small world." "Very small," I agreed, shaking his hand while noting the micro-expressions that flashed across his face. He was nervous. Why was he here? "David's company just signed a major deal with us," Marcus explained, clearly pleased with himself. "He's been instrumental in modernizing infrastructure management, really innovative stuff." "How wonderful." I managed, while my mind raced through possibilities. Chen attending my brother's wedding couldn't be random. Either he suspected my true identity, or there was another connection I'd missed. "Your brother speaks highly of you," Chen said, studying my face. "He mentioned you work security. That must give you interesting perspectives on our facility." There it was, a probe, a test. "Oh, I just check badges and walk the halls," I replied with a self-deprecating laugh. "Nothing as exciting as what you and Marcus do. I'll leave you gentlemen to talk business." As I walked away, I caught Chen's reflection in a champagne glass. He was watching me intently, his phone already in his hand. My earpiece crackled again. "Phoenix, are you seeing this?" Martinez's voice was urgent. Chen just sent an encrypted message. "Our cyber team is working on it." I made my way back to the main reception area, my mind cataloging every detail, every possible scenario. The next 12 hours would determine whether 30 million Americans woke up to a normal Sunday or to nationwide chaos. And I was standing at my brother's wedding, pretending to be exactly what everyone thought I was: a failure. The band announced the father-daughter dance, and I watched Dad lead Jennifer onto the floor for the traditional dance with the bride. In a normal family, he would have danced with me next. Instead, he'd made it clear years ago that such gestures were reserved for children who hadn't disappointed him. Casey, Uncle Robert Dad's brother, appeared at my elbow. "Would you honor me with a dance? Can't have you standing alone?" I accepted, grateful for his kindness, even as my phone continued buzzing with updates. As we moved onto the dance floor, I noticed Chen in deep conversation with another wedding guest. Recognition hit me like a physical blow. The other man was Thomas Brightwater, Uncle Tommy to me, Dad's former partner on the force, and a man I discovered just yesterday had connections to one of the shell companies funding the terror cell. The pieces were falling into place in ways I hadn't anticipated. My brother's wedding wasn't just a family celebration. It was a convergence point for a conspiracy that reached deeper than anyone imagined. "You look beautiful tonight," Uncle Robert said kindly. "Don't let anyone tell you different." "Thank you," I murmured, but my attention was on Chen and Tommy, watching their body language, the way they kept glancing around nervously. As the dance ended, my secure phone vibrated with an emergency pattern. I excused myself again, this time heading for the service corridor where I could check messages without interruption. The decrypted message from Chen made my blood freeze. "The bird is in the cage. Proceed to phase 2. I was the bird, they knew. No, I realized, checking the timestamp. The message was sent before he saw me. There was another meaning, another target. My fingers flew across the phone, sending coded warnings to my team while maintaining the appearance of checking social media. "There you are." My mother appeared in the corridor. "Honey, are you feeling all right? You keep disappearing." "Just needed some air," I said, slipping my phone away. "It's a beautiful wedding, Mom." She studied my face with that maternal intuition that had always unnerved me. "Casey, I know things haven't been easy. Your father, he doesn't mean to be so hard on you. He just had different hopes." "I know," I said softly, "but I'm exactly where I need to be." She hugged me then, and for a moment I let myself feel the warmth of maternal love, knowing that in hours everything would change. When the truth came out, would she understand why I'd lied for 2 years? Would any of them? "Promise me something," she whispered. "Whatever you're really doing, be careful." I pulled back, startled. She smiled sadly. "I'm your mother. I know when my daughter is more than she seems. I may not understand it, but I trust you." Before I could respond, the corridor door burst open. Aunt Patricia stumbled through, clearly well into her cups. "There you are, Casey. You're missing the bouquet toss. Though I suppose at your age, you're probably not interested in catching it. Have you thought more about what I said? Marcus knows people in HR at Goldman. Even a receptionist job would be better than security work." "I'll keep that in mind," I said, guiding her back toward the reception while my mother followed, shooting me one last meaningful look. The reception was reaching its peak. The cake had been cut, toasts had been made, and guests were dancing with abandon. I stood at my assigned table, watching my father hold court with his police buddies, their voices carrying over the music. "You know what the problem is today?" Dad was saying. "No one wants to do real police work anymore. They want the glory without the grind. Take my daughter, perfect example. Had all the advantages, good genes, proper training, and what does she do? Quits after one day on the job to play rent-a-cop." His audience nodded sympathetically while my hands clenched beneath the table. One day on the job. He still believed that lie I'd told to explain my sudden career change when the federal recruitment came through. My phone vibrated. Martinez again, cyber team cracked it. "Bird in the cage" refers to their inside source at Homeland. "We have a mole Phoenix. Trust no one except primary team. Maintain cover. Extract at 2300 hours for briefing." A mole. Someone in my own agency was feeding information to the terror cell. The stakes had just escalated beyond anything we'd prepared for. Chen appeared at my table, champagne glass in hand. "Miss Morrison enjoying the wedding?" "It's lovely," I replied carefully. "You know, I've been thinking, a smart woman like you stuck in security work. It must be frustrating, especially with your background. Your father mentioned you graduated from the police academy." Briefly, I said, maintaining my cover story. Still, that training could be valuable. My organization occasionally needs people with, shall we say, flexible ethics. People who understand that sometimes rules need to be bent for the greater good. The pay would be significantly better than what Stratton offers. There it was, a recruitment pitch. They didn't suspect me, they wanted to turn me. I don't know what you mean, I said, playing dumb. He smiled, reaching into his pocket to produce a business card. As he handed it to me, his sleeve pulled back, revealing a tattoo I recognized from intelligence briefings. The mark of the Sovereign Brotherhood, the domestic terror organization we'd been tracking. Think about it, he said. Your current position gives you access to certain areas. That access, combined with your training and obvious intelligence, could be very valuable to the right people. We could make it worth your while. Financial security, respect all the things that have eluded you. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me holding his card while my mind raced. This was an unexpected opportunity. If they wanted to recruit me, I could gather intelligence from inside their organization. But it would mean going even deeper, undercover, becoming someone who betrayed everything I'd sworn to protect. The band announced the last dance, and couples moved onto the floor. I stood alone watching my family celebrate while the weight of the next 12 hours pressed down on me. In the shadows of the country club garden, I could see tactical positions, escape routes, potential threats. While everyone else saw a wedding, I saw a battlefield waiting to emerge. Casey. Marcus appeared beside me. Thanks for being here today. I know things with Dad are complicated, but it means a lot that you came. Of course, I said. You're my brother. He shifted uncomfortably. Listen, I'm sorry about Dad. The way he talks about you. It's not right. You're doing your best, and that security job, it's honest work. Not everyone can be like you, I finished gently. I was going to say lucky, he admitted. Success isn't just about talent. It's about opportunities, connections. If you ever need help, a reference or anything... Thanks, Marcus, but I'm good where I am. He looked skeptical, but didn't press. As he returned to his bride, I made my decision. In 3 hours, I'd slip away from this reception and step back into my real life. The terror cell thought they had 12 hours. They were wrong. We had less than 10. Uncle Robert had kindly offered to dance with me during the traditional father-daughter dance, since Dad was occupied with the bride. As we moved slowly to The Way You Look Tonight, I found myself transported back 8 years to another dance floor, another moment when everything changed. You're somewhere else, Uncle Robert observed gently, his police instincts still sharp despite retirement. Just remembering, I admitted letting him guide me through the steps while other fathers danced with their daughters around us. The memory was crystalline in its clarity. My police academy graduation day, the proudest moment of my life, until it became the catalyst for everything that followed. I'd worked twice as hard as anyone else in my class, determined to prove I belonged there. 24 weeks of grueling training, and I'd finished third in a class of 48. Your dad was tough on you that day, Uncle Robert said, somehow reading my thoughts. I told him he was wrong. I managed to smile, water under the bridge. But it wasn't not really. I could still hear Dad's voice at the reception afterward, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear, "Third place." I suppose that's something. Though between you and me, the physical standards for women are lower. She barely passed the firearms qualification. Probably wash out in 6 months when she realizes real police work isn't like the movies. My classmates had heard every word. My training officer, Lieutenant Sarah Walker, had witnessed my humiliation. The other graduates, with their proud families, had all seen Chief Morrison's daughter being dismissed as a diversity hire who'd squeaked by on lowered standards. The truth I'd scored highest in criminal law, second in defensive tactics, and my barely passing firearms qualification was actually in the top 10%. But Dad had seen what he wanted to see, a daughter who didn't measure up to his legacy. He was drunk, Uncle Robert said quietly, and wrong. Sarah Walker told me later, you were one of the best recruits she'd trained. The song ended, and I squeezed his hand gratefully before stepping away. The reception swirled on around me, but my mind remained fixed on that night 8 years ago. After Dad's performance at the restaurant, I'd gone home to my tiny apartment and cried until I had no tears left. Then at 2 in the morning, my phone had rung. Agent Morrison. The voice had been crisp professional. "This is Director Patricia Thornton, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I understand you had an interesting graduation today." "I think you have the wrong number," I'd said. "I'm Officer Morrison, not an agent." "Not yet," she'd replied. "But I've been following your career with interest. Your academy instructors speak highly of you. More importantly, your psychological profiles indicate unique qualifications for specialized work. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow, unofficially." That meeting in a nondescript coffee shop had changed everything. Director Thornton hadn't minced words. "We need someone with your specific background for a deep cover operation. Someone who can disappear into a role completely, who understands law enforcement but isn't tied to any specific department. Someone with a reason to distance themselves from their previous life." "You mean someone whose father just humiliated them in front of their entire graduating class?" I'd asked bitterly. "I mean someone with the strength to turn pain into purpose," she'd corrected. "This assignment would require absolute secrecy. 2 years minimum undercover. No contact with family beyond surface level. Your cover story would be that you quit the force after 1 day couldn't handle the pressure. Can you live with that?" Looking at my father now holding court with his cronies, I remembered my answer. When do I start? The next 6 months had been intensive training unlike anything the police academy had offered. Languages, advanced combat techniques, cybersecurity, psychological operations. I'd excelled at everything driven by a need to prove my worth to someone, even if that someone could never know. Casey. My cousin Emma appeared slightly unsteady in her heels. "Girl, you need to catch up. How many drinks have you had?" "Just one," I lied, holding up my untouched champagne flute. "Well, that explains why you look so serious. Come on, let's get you a real drink. Maybe you'll finally loosen up and tell us about your love life. There must be someone right. A security guard at your building? Maybe a nice janitor." The condescension dripped from every word, but I'd grown immune to it. While Emma and the rest of my family saw failure, my federal team saw one of their most valuable assets. In 2 years, undercover, I'd identified 17 members of a domestic terror cell, traced their funding sources to unexpected places, and prevented 2 smaller attacks without blowing my cover. My phone buzzed. Another update from Martinez. Tommy Brightwater just transferred $50,000 to a Cayman account linked to the Brotherhood. He's definitely involved. I glanced at Uncle Tommy Dad's former partner, now chatting with the mother of the bride. He'd bounced me on his knee as a child, taught me to ride a bike, been at every birthday until I'd failed out of law enforcement. The betrayal cut deep, but not as deep as what I'd discovered about him. "I need some air," I told Emma, extracting myself from her grip. Outside on the terrace, I found a quiet corner and activated my encrypted phone. The intelligence was damning. Tommy Brightwater had been using his police connections to provide the terror cell with information about security protocols, shift changes, and vulnerability assessments. He thought he was just making extra money helping security consultants. He had no idea he was enabling mass murder. "Phoenix." Agent Martinez's voice came through my earpiece. "We've identified the mole. It's worse than we thought." "How much worse?" "Assistant Director Kevin Marshall. He's been feeding them our operational plans for 6 months. They know we're closing in, which is why they've accelerated their timeline." Marshall? I'd briefed him personally 3 times. He knew my real identity, my cover, everything. If he'd turned that information over... "Am I compromised?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Negative. He's been selective about what he shares, keeps his own assets protected to maintain credibility. But Phoenix, this means we can't use normal channels. I'm assembling a black team. Can you get free by 2300? "Copy that." I turned to find my mother standing in the doorway, concern etched on her face. "Honey, you've been out here a while. People are starting to notice. Just needed a minute, I said, slipping my phone away. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Casey, I meant what I said earlier. Whatever you're really doing, I trust you. But seeing you tonight, the way you keep checking your phone, the way you're watching everyone, you're not just a security guard, are you? The weight of 2 years of lies pressed down on me. One word of truth to my mother could unravel everything, could cost lives. But the need to tell someone, anyone, that I wasn't the failure they all believed me to be was almost overwhelming. Mom, No, she interrupted. Don't tell me, I don't need to know. Just promise me you'll be safe. I hugged her tightly, memorizing the feeling, knowing that after tonight everything would change. I promise. We returned to the reception together where the party was reaching its crescendo. Dad had moved on from disparaging me to telling stories about his glory days on the force. 30 years of service, he was saying. Commendations, medals, respect. That's what real commitment looks like. Not everyone has what it takes, of course. Some people just aren't cut out for the pressure. His eyes found mine across the room, and the message was clear. Some people like his daughter. Richard Morrison. A new voice cut through the conversation. David Chen had approached Dad's group, his smile calculated. I've heard impressive things about your career. Your reputation precedes you. Dad preened under the attention. Well, I did my part, kept the city safe for 3 decades. Indeed, and now your son carries on the family tradition of excellence, albeit in finance rather than law enforcement. Chen's eyes flicked to me. It must be gratifying to see one of your children achieve such success. The emphasis on one was subtle but unmistakable. Dad's jaw tightened slightly. Marcus has always been driven, Dad agreed. Takes after his old man. And your daughter, Chen, pressed his interest, seemingly casual but his intent razor sharp. I understand she also attempted to follow in your footsteps. Attempted is the right word, Dad said dismissively. Some people just don't have the stomach for real work. She lasted exactly 1 day on the force before quitting. Now she checks badges for a living. Chen made sympathetic noises while my hands clenched in my lap. 1 day. The lie I'd told to explain my sudden career change had become the defining narrative of my failure in my father's eyes. He'd never know about the 437 days I'd actually served, first as a federal agent in training, then as an undercover operative. He'd never know about the commendations locked in a safe in Washington, the letters of appreciation from the Attorney General, the lives saved. Still, Chen mused, security work requires its own kind of dedication. Attention to detail, discretion, these are valuable qualities. He was recruiting me in front of my father. The audacity of it was breathtaking. I suppose, Dad conceded grudgingly, though it's hardly a career, more like a placeholder for people who can't do better. The words hit their mark as they always did, but this time, instead of shame, I felt a strange sense of liberation. In less than 3 hours, I'd leave this reception and step back into my real life. The mission that had defined me for 2 years was reaching its climax. Win or lose, the truth would come out. Chen excused himself from Dad's group and made his way toward me. I pretended to be absorbed in watching the dancers, but every sense was alert to his approach. Your father is a hard man, he observed, settling into the chair beside me. He has high standards, I replied neutrally. Sometimes those who demand the most from others are compensating for their own insecurities, Chen said. I've built my organization by recognizing talent that others overlook, particularly in those who've been underestimated. Mr. Chen, I appreciate the pep talk, but... David, please. And this isn't a pep talk. It's an opportunity. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Tomorrow morning, certain events will unfold that will reshape the power structure of this country. Those who position themselves correctly tonight will find themselves in very different circumstances by noon. My blood chilled at the casual mention of tomorrow's planned attack, but I forced myself to remain calm. I don't understand. I think you do. You're smarter than anyone here gives you credit for. Working security at Stratton has given you unique insights into infrastructure vulnerabilities, insights that could be very valuable to the right people. Are you suggesting I betray my employer? I asked, injecting just the right amount of shock into my voice. I'm suggesting you stop letting others define your worth, he countered. Your father sees failure. I see potential. The question is, what do you see? Before I could answer, the lights dimmed for the cake cutting. Chen stood pressing his business card into my hand once more. Think about it, Casey. By tomorrow afternoon, the world will be different. You can be a victim of that change or a beneficiary. The choice is yours. He melted back into the crowd, leaving me holding his card while my secure phone buzzed urgently. Martinez had sent a coded message, asset confirmed at location, green light for extraction in 90 minutes. 90 minutes. I watched my family gather around Marcus and Jennifer as they cut their wedding cake, cameras flashing, everyone smiling. In 90 minutes, I'd slip away from this reception, and by dawn, I'd either be a hero or a casualty. Either way, the Casey Morrison they thought they knew would cease to exist. Not hungry. Aunt Patricia appeared with 2 plates of cake. Oh, honey, I didn't mean to upset you earlier with the dating talk. I just worry about you all alone in that apartment. Your mother says you never bring anyone to family gatherings. I'm fine, Aunt Patricia, really. Are you, though? She studied me with unexpected perception. You know, I remember when you were little. So determined, so fierce. You used to say you were going to be the best police officer in the world. What happened to that little girl? I looked at my aunt, at her genuine concern beneath the layers of condescension, and for a moment I wanted to tell her the truth. That little girl had become something more than anyone imagined. She just learned to hide it better. She grew up, I said simply. Well, growing up doesn't mean giving up, Aunt Patricia said, patting my hand. It's never too late to change direction. Look at me, I didn't find my calling until I was 40. Her calling was real estate, hardly comparable to preventing domestic terrorism, but I appreciated the sentiment. As she wandered off to dispense advice to other relatives, I made my preparations. In 1 hour, I'd complain of a headache. In 75 minutes, I'd say my goodbyes. In 90 minutes, I'd drive away from this reception and toward a confrontation 2 years in the making. The band struck up another slow song, and I watched couples take the floor. Dad danced with Mom now, both of them looking happy in the soft lighting. For all his flaws, he loved her deeply. Would that love extend to understanding when the truth came out? Would any of them comprehend why I'd chosen duty over their approval? Penny, for your thoughts. Uncle Robert had returned this time with 2 glasses of scotch. You look like you could use this more than champagne. I accepted the glass gratefully, though I wouldn't drink it. Just thinking about choices. Ah. He settled beside me, his movements still carrying the careful awareness of a long-time cop. You know, your dad and I didn't speak for 5 years once. Really, this was news to me. Really? I made a choice he didn't agree with. Left the force to join the FBI. He saw it as betrayal, abandoning the brotherhood for the feds. Uncle Robert smiled ruefully. Took him years to understand I hadn't left law enforcement. I just found a different way to serve. My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice steady. What made him come around? Results. When I helped take down the Torino crime family, suddenly, I wasn't a traitor anymore. I was his brother, who'd made good. He sipped his scotch thoughtfully. Sometimes, Casey, the people who love us can only see the choices we make through their own lens. It doesn't mean they don't love us. It just means they can't imagine any path but their own. And if they never come around, I asked quietly, then you live with the knowledge that you did what you believed was right. Not everyone gets to be understood. Some of us have to settle for being useful. He stood leaving his half-finished scotch on the table. Whatever you're wrestling with tonight, trust yourself. You've got good instincts even if your father can't see it. As he walked away, I wondered if he knew more than he let on. Uncle Robert had always been the most perceptive member of the family. Had he guessed at the truth beneath my cover story? My phone buzzed with a final update from Martinez. Chen just activated a sleeper. They're moving weapons into position. Extraction in 60 minutes is critical. I stood smoothing my bridesmaid dress and began making my rounds. This elaborate deception was almost over. Tomorrow the world would know about the terror plot and the agent who'd stopped it. But tonight I was still just Casey Morrison. Family disappointment walking through my brother's wedding with a smile that hid the weight of 30 million lives. The next hour would be the longest of my life. I slipped into the country club's marble bathroom, locking myself in the furthest stall before activating my secure video link. The small screen flickered to life, revealing the tense faces of my core team gathered in the operations center. Behind them, I could see the massive digital displays tracking terror cell movements across 5 cities. "Phoenix, thank God," Martinez said without preamble. "We've got a situation. The cell isn't just moving weapons. They're positioning cyber assets at all 5 target locations." Agent Liu from Cyber Division leaned into frame. "They're not just planning to cut power. They've got ransomware designed to lock down financial systems during the chaos. We're looking at potential economic collapse if they succeed." Timeline. I asked, keeping my voice low as someone entered the bathroom. 6 hours until they start uploading the malware. Physical attacks commence at dawn, approximately 7 hours from now. Director Thornton had joined the call, her expression grim. "Phoenix, your position at Stratton is critical. Can you maintain cover?" Through the stall door, I heard Aunt Patricia's voice. "Did you see Casey disappear again? That girl spends more time hiding than socializing." "Cover intact for now," I whispered. But Chen approached me. "He's trying to recruit me for the operation." "Jesus," Martinez swore. "They're getting desperate if they're recruiting at weddings." "Or confident," Liu countered. "They might think they're so close to success that it doesn't matter who knows." Director Thornton made a decision. "Phoenix, if Chen approaches you again, play along. We need intel on their final positions. How's your extraction window?" 45 minutes. "But Director, there's something else. Tommy Brightwater is here, Dad's former partner. The financial transfers, we're aware. He's being monitored. Phoenix, listen carefully. The mole marshal has gone dark. We think he's preparing to run. Without him, we're blind to what the cell knows about our operations. You're our only reliable asset inside their sphere right now." The bathroom door opened again. My mother's voice called out, "Casey, honey, are you in here?" "I have to go," I whispered, maintaining cover. The screen went dark just as I flushed the toilet for appearance's sake. Stepping out of the stall, I found my mother waiting by the sinks, her expression worried. "There you are, sweetie, you keep disappearing. Are you feeling all right?" "Just wedding emotions," I lied, washing my hands while avoiding her penetrating gaze. She didn't look convinced. "Your father's about to give his toast. Whatever you think of him, please come listen. For Marcus." I followed her back to the reception where Dad was already standing with the microphone. The crowd quieted, gathering around as he raised his champagne glass. "Friends, family, thank you for joining us to celebrate Marcus and Jennifer." His voice carried the authority of 3 decades in law enforcement. As many of you know, I spent my career protecting and serving this community, but my greatest pride has always been my family. I found a spot near the back, partially hidden behind a decorative palm. "Marcus," Dad continued, "you've exceeded every expectation. From valedictorian to Goldman Sachs, you've shown what determination and excellence look like. Jennifer, you're getting a man who understands commitment, who achieves everything he sets his mind to." The crowd murmured appreciatively. Marcus beamed while Jennifer clutched his hand. "In law enforcement, we have a saying, you're only as strong as your weakest link." Dad's eyes swept the crowd and found me. "But in families, we support each other regardless. We celebrate the successes and accept the rest." The pause before "accept" felt like a knife between my ribs. Several guests followed his gaze to me, their expressions sympathetic. Poor Casey, the family disappointment being graciously included, despite her failures. "So here's to Marcus and Jennifer." Dad raised his glass higher. May you build a life filled with achievement, prosperity, and children who make you proud every single day. The emphasis on every was subtle, but unmistakable. Glasses clinked around me while I stood frozen, my untouched champagne warm in my hand. "That was lovely, Richard," someone said, and the conversation resumed around me. I was about to escape to the terrace when Chen appeared at my elbow. "Interesting toast. Your father has a way with words." He was a police chief. Public speaking comes with the territory. "Indeed. Walk with me, Casey. I have a proposition that might interest you." I glanced around. The reception was in full swing, no one paying attention to us. My extraction window was down to 35 minutes, but this was an intelligence opportunity I couldn't pass up. We strolled toward the garden where string lights created pools of soft illumination between darker shadows. Chen waited until we were well away from other guests before speaking. In 6 hours, the world changes. Power grids fail, financial systems freeze, and in the chaos that follows, a new order emerges. He spoke casually as if discussing the weather. Those who facilitate this transition will be rewarded beyond their wildest dreams. "You're talking about terrorism," I said, allowing shock to color my voice. "I'm talking about revolution," he corrected. "The current system has failed people like you, Casey. You followed the rules, tried to serve, and what did it get you? Mockery from your own father, a dead-end job, a studio apartment you can barely afford." Each fact was accurate, pulled from the careful cover identity we'd constructed. But hearing them weaponized made me understand how the Brotherhood recruited. They found the wounded and promised them power. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Tomorrow morning at 5:30, you'll receive a call about an emergency at Stratton. You'll respond as any dedicated security guard would. Once inside, you'll disable certain surveillance systems and ensure specific doors remain unlocked. Nothing more. And in exchange, $10 million in an offshore account, a new identity if you want it, or keep your current life but with the resources to throw your father's condescension back in his face. Imagine his expression when his failure daughter buys a house bigger than his." The number was staggering. 10 million just to look the other way. How much were they spending on this operation? "I could go to prison," I said, playing the role of tempted but fearful. "Only if we fail, and we won't." Chen's confidence was absolute. "We have people everywhere. FBI, Homeland Security, local police, even some you'd never suspect." His eyes flicked meaningfully toward the reception. Was he implying Tommy Brightwater or someone else? "I need to think," I said. "Of course, but not too long." He handed me a burner phone. "When you decide, call the only number programmed in there. Say, 'I'm ready for my shift,' and someone will provide final instructions." He started to leave, then turned back. "Oh, and Casey, your supervisor David Chen will be on site tomorrow morning. It would be tragic if something happened to him during the confusion. Workplace accidents happen, especially when infrastructure fails." The threat was clear. Chen the terrorist was planning to eliminate Chen, my supposed boss, who was actually another undercover agent we'd inserted 6 months ago. They planned to frame him as the sole perpetrator, while the real organizers vanished. "I understand," I said quietly. "I thought you might." He smiled. "You're smarter than anyone gives you credit for. Until tomorrow, Miss Morrison." He walked back toward the reception, leaving me alone in the garden with a burner phone and the weight of the investigation pressing down on me. I activated my secure device one more time, sending a coded message to Martinez. "Fish on hook. They want me to facilitate entry. Extraction in 25 minutes. His response was immediate. "Copy. Team standing by. New intel marshal spotted at train station. He's running. Authority to pursue." I thought quickly. Marshall knew my identity, knew our operational plans. If he reached the Brotherhood leadership, negative. Maintain surveillance only. Can't risk spooking primary targets. Understood. Phoenix, be advised we've intercepted chatter. They know we have someone inside but haven't identified you. Watch your 6. I pocketed both phones and made my way back to the reception. 20 minutes until extraction. I needed to say goodbyes without raising suspicion. The party had reached the stage where older guests were departing, while younger ones settled in for serious drinking. I found Marcus and Jennifer near the gift table accepting congratulations from a stream of well-wishers. "Hey," I said when I could get close. "I wanted to say goodbye, early morning tomorrow." "You're leaving already." Marcus looked disappointed. "Casey, come on. How often do I get married?" "Just once, hopefully," I said with a smile. "It was a beautiful wedding. I'm really happy for you both." Jennifer hugged me impulsively. "Thank you for being a bridesmaid. I know we haven't had much chance to get close, but I hope that changes." "I'd like that," I said, meaning it while knowing that after tomorrow nothing would be the same. "Casey," Marcus lowered his voice, "listen about Dad's toast. He didn't mean—" "Yes, he did," I interrupted gently. "And it's okay. He sees what he sees. I can't change that." "But it's not right. You're not a failure. You're my sister, and you're doing your best, and that matters." The earnestness in his voice nearly broke my composure. Marcus, for all his success and occasional obliviousness, did love me. Would that love survive learning about my deception? "Thanks," I managed. "Take care of each other, okay?" I left them returning to their guests and went in search of my parents. I found them near the bar, Dad holding court with yet another group of his former colleagues. "I'm heading out," I announced during a lull in conversation. "Already?" Mom stood to hug me. "Drive safely, sweetheart." Dad barely glanced my way. "Night shift?" "Something like that," I agreed. "Well, someone has to guard empty buildings," he said to his audience, who chuckled obligingly, "though I'll never understand choosing that over real police work." "Not everyone can be you, Dad," I said quietly. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, regret recognition that his words had landed, but it was gone before I could be sure. "No," he agreed, "they can't." I left without another word, collecting my small clutch from the coat check and walking toward the parking lot. 15 minutes to extraction. As I reached my car, I noticed Uncle Tommy by his vehicle speaking urgently into his phone. "The timelines moved up," he was saying. "I can't—" "Yes, I understand. The money better be in my account by morning." He ended the call and noticed me watching. For a moment, we stared at each other across the parking lot. Did he know that I knew his hand moved slightly toward his jacket, where 30 years of police work told me he kept a weapon? "Casey," he called out, his voice carefully neutral. "Leaving early?" "Work," I said simply. "Always dedicated," he said, but there was something off in his tone, a nervousness that hadn't been there before. "You know your dad's wrong about you. You've got good instincts, better than he gives you credit for." "Thanks, Uncle Tommy." "Whatever happens," he said suddenly urgently, "remember that some of us didn't have choices. Some of us got trapped by circumstances we never saw coming." Before I could respond, he got in his car and drove away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot with the weight of his words. Was it a confession, a warning, a threat? I got in my own vehicle, a modest Honda that fit my cover identity, and drove away from the country club. In my rearview mirror, I could see the reception, continuing lights, twinkling music carrying on the night air. My family was in there celebrating, oblivious to the danger approaching. At exactly 11 p.m., I pulled into a rest stop off Highway 47. A black SUV was waiting, engine running. I parked beside it and transferred quickly, leaving my Honda for a cleanup crew to retrieve. "Welcome back, Phoenix," Martinez said from the driver's seat. "Ready to save the world." I thought about Chen's offer $10 million to betray everything I'd sworn to protect. I thought about my father's dismissive words, my family's condescension, 2 years of being seen as a failure. "Let's do this," I said. As we drove toward the operations center, I pulled out the burner phone Chen had given me. $10 million. A new life. Respect. I powered it off and handed it to Martinez. "They tried to flip me, offered me $10 million to facilitate entry." He whistled low. "That's serious money, tempted." I thought about my father's toast, about being the weak link, about accepting the rest. Tomorrow he'd learn exactly what his disappointment daughter had accepted the responsibility of protecting 30 million Americans, including him. Not even for a second, I said. And I meant it. The country club's cocktail hour was reaching its peak when I noticed a familiar figure crossing the garden toward the main reception area. My blood chilled as I recognized the purposeful stride, the expensive suit, the carefully neutral expression that I'd observed every day for 2 years. David Chen, or rather the man everyone at Stratton Industries believed was David Chen, had arrived at my brother's wedding. I forced myself to remain calm, sipping my lukewarm champagne, while my mind raced through possibilities. This wasn't coincidence. In 2 years of undercover work, I'd learned that coincidences in this business usually meant someone was about to die. Casey. Marcus waved enthusiastically from across the garden. Come here, I want you to meet someone. Every instinct screamed danger as I made my way through the crowd. Chen stood beside my brother, a champagne flute in hand, his expression professionally pleasant. But I caught the micro tells, the slight tension in his jaw, the way his eyes tracked exits and assessed threats. He was as nervous as I was. Casey, this is David Chen from Stratton Industries, Marcus announced proudly. David's company just signed a major infrastructure management deal with our firm. David, this is my sister Casey. I believe you two might have crossed paths. Miss Morrison. Chen extended his hand smoothly. What a pleasant surprise. I had no idea you were Marcus's sister. I shook his hand, noting the dampness of his palm. Mr. Chen. Yes, quite a coincidence. You two know each other. Marcus looked delighted. What are the odds? Astronomical. Chen agreed, his smile not reaching his eyes. Your sister works security at our main facility. Very dedicated employee. Never misses a shift. The emphasis on those last words was subtle but clear. He was reminding me of my cover, warning me to maintain it. But why? Casey's always been reliable, Marcus said, missing the undercurrents entirely. Even if Dad doesn't... Well, anyway, David, you were telling me about the expansion plans. As the two men talked business, I studied Chen carefully. The man I'd reported to for 2 years was actually Agent Michael Park, deep cover like me, but from a different agency. His assignment was to infiltrate the Brotherhood's financial network while I focused on operational intelligence. We'd maintained strict separation, never acknowledging our true roles, even in private. So why was he here at my family's event, clearly terrified? If you'll excuse us, Chen suddenly said to Marcus, I actually need to discuss a scheduling matter with Casey. Weekend shifts and all that. Do you mind? Of course not, Marcus laughed. Even at weddings, work never stops, right? Casey, try not to let him guilt you into extra hours. It's supposed to be your day off. Chen guided me toward a quieter corner of the garden, his hand barely touching my elbow, but the pressure urgent. Once we were out of earshot, his professional mask cracked. We need to talk, he said quietly. Not here. Too many eyes. The gazebo in 5 minutes. He walked away before I could respond, stopping to glad hand other wedding guests as if nothing was wrong. But I'd seen the fear in his eyes. Agent Michael Park, who'd spent 3 years infiltrating one of the most dangerous domestic terror organizations in the country, was terrified. I mingled for the required 5 minutes, deflecting Aunt Patricia's latest attempt to set me up with her dentist's son, before making my way to the decorative gazebo at the garden's edge. Chen was already there, hidden in shadows. They know, he said without preamble. Not about you, not yet, but about me, my cover's blown. How I kept my voice steady despite the spike of adrenaline. Marshall, the mole at Homeland, he didn't just have operational intelligence, he had personnel files. He sold them everything Phoenix. Real names, addresses, family connections. His laugh was bitter. Ironic, isn't it? I came to your brother's wedding as a legitimate client, and it's probably what got me killed. You're not dead yet, I said firmly. When did you find out? 2 hours ago. Intercepted a communication meant for my handler, except my handler's been dead for 3 days. They're cleaning house, eliminating everyone who might compromise tomorrow's operation. He met my eyes. They plan to frame me as the mastermind. Dead men make convenient scapegoats. We can extract you, my team. No. He shook his head. If I run now, they'll know their communication was intercepted. They'll abort the operation, go underground, and we'll lose them. 30 million people, Phoenix. I can't have that on my conscience. So what's your plan? I stay visible, play the role, make them think I'm still oblivious. But I needed someone to know in case. He pulled a micro SD card from his pocket. Everything I've gathered. Financial records, communication logs, the works. Get this to your handler. I palmed the card smoothly. Michael. Park. My real name's Michael Park. He smiled sadly. Figured if I'm going to die tonight, someone should know who I really was. You're not going to die, I insisted. We'll figure something out. Maybe. But if I don't make it, tell my daughter. Tell her I was trying to be one of the good guys. Before I could respond, voices approached the gazebo. Chen straightened his professional mask, sliding back into place as Tommy Brightwater appeared with two other wedding guests I didn't recognize. David, Tommy boomed with false joviality. There you are. Gentlemen, let me introduce David Chen, the man who's going to help us modernize the city's infrastructure. The two men with Tommy had the look of money and menace. Expensive suits couldn't hide the prison tattoos peeking out from one's collar, or the way they both assessed Chen like butchers eyeing meat. Gentlemen, Chen nodded politely, and Miss Morrison. We were just discussing weekend scheduling, duty calls even at celebrations. Ah, yes, Casey. Tommy's smile was sharp. Richard's daughter. Still working security, I hear. Your father mentioned you're finding the work suitable to your abilities. The insult was clear, but I had bigger concerns. Tommy's companions were brotherhood. I recognized one from surveillance photos, Anton Volkov, an enforcer with a body count that would make serial killers envious. It pays the bills, I said mildly. Indeed. Well, David, shall we continue our discussion? These gentlemen are very interested in your security protocols at Stratton. Chen hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. Of course. Miss Morrison will continue our conversation Monday. If he lived until Monday. I watched them walk away, Chen surrounded by predators maintaining his cover even as they circled for the kill. The SD card in my pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Making my way back to the reception, I nearly collided with my father, who was returning from the bar with a fresh scotch. Watch where you're going, he snapped, then recognized me. Oh, Casey, shouldn't you be heading to work soon? Wouldn't want you to be late for your important security duties. The sarcasm dripped from every word, but for once I didn't care about his dismissal. I was calculating distances, sightlines, how quickly I could get Chen to safety if things went sideways. Dad, I said suddenly, you worked with Tommy Brightwater for 15 years. Did you ever suspect he might be dirty? His face darkened. What kind of question is that? Tommy's a decorated officer, served with distinction. That's not what I asked. How dare you? His voice rose. Tommy's worth 10 of you. He actually made something of himself instead of washing out after one day like a coward. You're right, I said quietly. I'm sure you knew your partner perfectly. I walked away before he could respond, but I heard him muttering to a passing guest about ungrateful children who didn't appreciate real heroes. Near the dance floor, I spotted Chen again. He'd managed to separate from Tommy's group and was talking with Jennifer's parents, playing the role of successful businessman perfectly. But I saw the tremor in his hand, the way he kept checking exits. My phone buzzed. Martinez. Extraction in 40 minutes, status. I typed back, complicated, package acquired, secondary asset compromised. Clarify secondary asset. Chen, cover blown, still in play. Recommendation. I looked across the reception at Agent Michael Park maintaining his cover, even under a death sentence, protecting an operation that would save millions. Then I looked at my family, oblivious to the danger lost in their celebrations and petty judgments. Let it play, I typed, we'll monitor. Roger, 40 minutes, Phoenix, don't be late. Chen caught my eye across the crowd and raised his champagne glass slightly. A toast to duty, to sacrifice, to choices made in shadows. I raised mine in return. That's when I noticed the man in the catering uniform who'd been circling Chen's position for the last 5 minutes. His movements were too purposeful, his attention too focused. I recognized the bulge of a weapon under his jacket. They weren't waiting until tomorrow. They were going to kill him here at my brother's wedding in front of 200 witnesses. I started moving, weaving through dancing couples, trying to intercept. But Chen saw him too. Our eyes met for an instant and he shook his head slightly. Don't blow your cover. The caterer was 10 feet from Chen, 5 feet, his hand moving toward his jacket. That's when Uncle Robert, of all people, stumbled drunkenly into the man's path. Sorry, he slurred, sloshing champagne on the caterer's uniform. These damn dress shoes. No traction. The caterer cursed, trying to sidestep, but Robert stumbled again, this time knocking a full tray of glasses onto the man. In the chaos of shattering glass and shouting, Chen melted into the crowd, disappearing toward the service exit. Robert straightened, suddenly seeming much more sober. His eyes found mine across the chaos. A slight nod, then he was back to playing the drunken uncle, apologizing profusely to the furious caterer. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, package delivered to dead drop. Tell my daughter I loved her. MP. Michael Park had made his choice. He'd completed his mission and vanished, leaving the Brotherhood to wonder if their assassination attempt had succeeded in the chaos. By the time they realized he'd escaped, the SD card would be in federal hands and their financial network would be crumbling. I deleted the message and checked the time. 35 minutes to extraction. The caterer had given up his pursuit, melting back into the service staff. Tommy Brightwater stood near the bar, his phone pressed to his ear, his expression furious. The Brotherhood's plan was unraveling and they didn't even know the worst of it yet. Casey. My mother appeared at my elbow. There you are. What on earth just happened? Uncle Robert had too much to drink, I said. Knocked over a whole tray. You know how he gets at weddings. She frowned. That's not like him. He's been sober for 3 years. Maybe it's the emotion of the day, I suggested. Marcus getting married and all. Maybe. But she didn't look convinced. My mother had always been the sharpest one in the family. Casey, is everything all right? You've seemed on edge all evening. Just work stuff, I deflected. Big inspection coming up, you know how it is. I don't actually. She studied my face. You never talk about your work. 2 years at that place and I couldn't tell you a single thing about what you actually do all day. I check badges, walk the halls, make sure doors are locked. It's not exactly thrilling dinner conversation. No, she agreed, but it matters to you. I can see that. Whatever you're really doing there, it matters. The perception in her voice nearly undid me. After tomorrow, she'd know the truth. They all would. But would understanding come with it? Thanks, Mom, I managed. Oh, sweetheart. She hugged me suddenly, fiercely. You know I love you right, no matter what your father says or thinks. You're my daughter, and I'm proud of you. Mom. No, let me say this. I don't know what's going on, but I know my daughter. The real one. Not the story everyone tells themselves. And that daughter, she's extraordinary. I held on to her tightly, memorizing the feeling, knowing everything was about to change. I love you too, Mom. She pulled back, wiping at her eyes. Now you better go say goodbye to your brother before you leave for work. And Casey, whatever happens, remember you have people who love you, really love you, not the version they think you should be. As she walked away, I realized she knew. Maybe not the specifics, but she knew her daughter was more than she seemed. Mothers always know. I found Marcus and Jennifer cutting their cake, surrounded by photographers and well-wishers. The scene was perfect, like something from a magazine. Tomorrow, those same photographers would be capturing a very different story. 25 minutes to extraction. Time to go. But first, I had one more role to play. Chen's assistant had given me something before he vanished, something that would ensure the Brotherhood's plan failed, even if everything else went wrong. I just had to survive the next 12 hours to deliver it. The wedding reception had reached that golden hour when the older guests nursed their drinks and shared stories, while the younger crowd dominated the dance floor. I stood near the French doors leading to the terrace, counting down the minutes until my extraction, while keeping watch for any more Brotherhood operatives who might have infiltrated the catering staff. That's when I heard my father's voice carrying across the crowd, clear and cutting as always, when he'd had just enough scotch to lose his filter, but not enough to slur his words. The thing about Casey, he was telling Marcus's new in-laws, the prestigious Hartwell family from Connecticut, is that she's always been jealous of her brother's success. Even as kids, she couldn't stand that he excelled where she struggled. I froze my hand tightening around my champagne flute. Mrs. Hartwell, an elegant woman dripping in pearls, made sympathetic noises. "It must be difficult," she said, "having children with such different capabilities." "You have no idea." Dad continued, warming to his theme. Marcus was reading at 3, Casey barely managed by 6. He made honor roll every semester, she squeaked by with C's. He got into Harvard, she barely made it into state school before dropping out. Each lie hit like a physical blow. I'd graduated magna cum laude, but that was from the Federal Academy program my family never knew about. My dropping out had been accepting a classified position that required me to disappear from civilian life. "Some people just peak early," Mr. Hartwell added pompously. "I'm sure she's doing her best with what she has." "Security guard work," Dad scoffed. "That's her peak. Checking badges, watching monitors. She played cops and robbers too seriously as a kid, thought she'd follow in my footsteps. One day on the force and she quit. Couldn't handle the pressure." Marcus stood nearby with Jennifer, and I waited for him to say something, anything, to defend me. Instead, he laughed awkwardly and added his own contribution to my humiliation. "Casey used to set up these elaborate spy games when we were kids," he told his in-laws. "Secret codes, hidden messages, surveillance on the neighbors. Mom was always getting calls about Casey sneaking around people's yards with her toy binoculars." "I remember that phase," Dad chimed in. "We thought she'd grow out of it, develop adult interests. Instead, she just found a job where she could play pretend cop without any real responsibility." The Hartwells laughed politely while I stood frozen, listening to my family reduce my entire existence to a punchline. Everything I'd sacrificed, endured, achieved, none of it existed in their narrative. I was just the family failure, the cautionary tale that made Marcus shine brighter by comparison. My phone vibrated with an urgent alert. Pulling it out, I saw Martinez had sent a priority message. "Financial intel from Chen's package confirms Marcus's firm connection. They've been washing Brotherhood money for 18 months. He doesn't know. Hartwell knows." Repeat. Hartwell is Brotherhood financial architect. I looked up sharply at Mr. Hartwell, seeing him with new eyes. The genial father of the bride was actually one of the key figures funding domestic terrorism. His daughter had just married my brother, tying our families together while he used Marcus's firm to launder blood money. "Excuse me." Jennifer's cousin Emma appeared at the group, slightly tipsy. "Mr. Morrison, someone's looking for you. Something about your car." Dad excused himself, but the damage was done. The Hartwells now saw me exactly as my father did. The embarrassment, the failure, the child who didn't matter. Mr. Hartwell's eyes found mine across the group, and for just a moment his mask slipped. He knew that I knew. "Casey?" he called out smoothly. "We were just talking about you. Marcus tells us you work at Stratton Industries. That must be interesting, being part of such a critical infrastructure facility." I approached, carefully aware I was walking into a trap. "It has its moments." "I imagine security work there requires quite a bit of trust," he continued. "Access to sensitive areas, knowledge of vulnerabilities. The wrong person in such a position could cause tremendous damage." "Good thing I'm just a badge checker," I said mildly. "No access to anything important." "No, of course not." He smiled, but his eyes were cold. "Still, even badge checkers see things, patterns, people coming and going at odd hours. Someone observant might notice irregularities." He was probing, trying to determine if I was just what I seemed or something more. Behind him, I could see two more men I recognized from surveillance photos. Brotherhood soldiers dressed as wedding guests slowly surrounding our conversation. "I mostly notice if people forget their badges," I said. "Pretty boring stuff." "Boring can be profitable," Hartwell said, "for the right person willing to share what they observe. Your brother mentioned your student loans, the studio apartment. Must be frustrating watching everyone else succeed while you struggle." "Dad, what are you doing?" Jennifer appeared, linking her arm through his. "Stop trying to recruit Casey. This is my wedding, not a business meeting." "Just making conversation, sweetheart," he said smoothly. "Your new sister-in-law is more interesting than she appears." Jennifer laughed. "Casey. No offense, but she's exactly what she appears. Marcus told me all about her. Sweet girl, not too bright, but she means well." The casual cruelty from someone I'd tried to welcome into the family stung more than I expected. Marcus had painted me as simple-minded to his new wife, ensuring she'd never see me as anything more than the family charity case. "If you'll excuse me," I said, "I should find my parents." "Of course," Hartwell said, "but Casey, if you ever want to discuss your future, I'm always interested in helping family, even extended family who've lost their way." I walked away feeling his eyes on my back, knowing he'd just threatened me in front of witnesses who'd never recognize it as such. My phone showed 15 minutes until extraction. I needed to start making my exits. I found my mother near the dessert table chatting with her book club friends. She excused herself when she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "Nothing. I just need to head out soon. Work called." "Oh, honey, can't they manage one night without you?" If only she knew they'd been managing without Casey Morrison for 2 years. The woman checking badges was a ghost, a carefully crafted fiction. "Big inspection tomorrow." I lied. "I need to prep some things." She hugged me tightly. "Drive safe. Text me when you get home." "I will," I promised, knowing I wouldn't. By the time she woke up tomorrow, her daughter would be all over the news. I looked for Marcus to say goodbye, but found him in the middle of another story about our childhood this time, regaling his groomsmen with the tale of how I'd tried to fingerprint the mailman because I was convinced he was a Russian spy. "She actually made a case file," he laughed, "with photos and everything. Poor Mr. Henderson thought we had the world's weirdest kid." His friends roared with laughter while I stood in the shadows, remembering the truth he'd twisted. Mr. Henderson had been arrested 2 years later for mail theft and identity fraud. My 8-year-old instincts had been dead on, but in Marcus's version, I was just a weird kid playing games. I turned to leave without saying goodbye, but nearly collided with Tommy Brightwater. My father's former partner stood too close, whiskey heavy on his breath. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, his hand catching my elbow. "Work," I said, trying to step around him. "Always dedicated, Casey." His grip tightened. "You know, I've been thinking. You see everything at Stratton, don't you? All those late nights walking those empty halls." "I should go." I tried to pull away, but he held firm. "Your daddy never appreciated what you could have been," he said, his voice dropping. "Smart girl like you wasted on badge checking. Other people would value those skills. Pay proper money for them." "Let go of me, Uncle Tommy." "Think about it." He pressed something into my hand, a business card. "Call that number if you want to triple your salary. All you have to do is share a few harmless observations. Nothing illegal, just information." He released me and melted back into the crowd before I could respond. The card in my hand had only a phone number, no name or business. But I recognized the format. It was a Brotherhood contact protocol, the same one Chen had given me earlier, but with a different number. They were tag-teaming me, approaching from multiple angles, each testing, to see if I could be turned. The financial pressure from Hartwell, the emotional manipulation from Tommy, the direct approach from Chen. They were desperate to get someone inside Stratton before tomorrow's attack. What they didn't know was that they already had someone inside. They had me. And in 10 minutes, I'd be leaving this wedding with enough intelligence to destroy their entire operation. I made my way toward the parking lot, noting the positions of Brotherhood operatives scattered throughout the reception. My count was up to 7, not including Hartwell and Tommy. Whatever happened tomorrow, they wanted witnesses here, who could testify they'd seen nothing suspicious, just a normal wedding celebration. That's when I spotted something that made my blood run cold. Emma, my cousin, who'd been drunkenly catching the bouquet earlier, was now stone sober and speaking rapidly into an earpiece near the service entrance. Her earlier intoxication had been an act. I thought back through the evening. Emma had been everywhere, floating between groups, asking questions, playing the harmless party girl. She'd had access to every conversation, every private moment. If she was Brotherhood... My phone buzzed. Martinez, abort extraction. Emma Morrison flagged as hostile asset. They know Phoenix is at wedding. Do not return to vehicle. Alternative extraction in progress. I stopped walking, my mind racing. Emma was my cousin. We'd grown up together, shared holidays, family vacations. How long had she been turned? What had she told them? A hand fell on my shoulder. Uncle Robert stood behind me, no trace of his earlier drunkenness. "Walk with me," he said quietly. "Now." I had no choice but to comply. He guided me away from the parking lot toward the service area of the country club. "I know what you are," he said conversationally. "Have known for about a year. The way you move, the way you watch people. You're not security, Casey. You're a hunter." "Uncle Robert." "Shut up and listen. Emma's been feeding them information for 6 months. Money troubles, bad divorce, they found her weakness and exploited it. She thinks she's just selling gossip about family members. Doesn't know she's helping terrorists." We reached a service door. He produced a key card and swiped us through. "How do you..." "Because I'm not really retired," he said. "FBI Counterterrorism Division. Have been since I left the force. Your dad never forgave me for going federal, but that's beside the point. Your extraction's been compromised. Emma told them about your car, your patterns. They're waiting." He led me through a service corridor to a loading dock where a catering van waited, engine running. "Martinez is 3 blocks north," Robert continued. "This van will get you there. And Casey, after tomorrow, when the truth comes out, your father's going to have to face what he's been blind to. Be patient with him. It's hard for a man to realize he's been wrong about everything." "Does he know about you?" Robert smiled sadly. "No more than he knows about you. We're both ghosts in this family playing roles that keep them safe. Get going. You've got work to do." I climbed into the van, looking back at the uncle I'd never really known. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Emma's not the only family member who's been compromised. Watch your 6 Phoenix. The Brotherhood has roots in places you haven't imagined." The van pulled away, leaving me with more questions than answers. As we drove through the night toward extraction, I thought about my family back at the reception. Dad telling stories about my failures. Marcus painting me as a joke. Jennifer dismissing me as simple. Emma betraying us all for money. In 12 hours, they'd all know the truth. But would it change anything? Or would I still be the disappointment, just one who'd lied to them for 2 years? My phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number, but I recognized the code. Michael Park had made it to safety. "Tell my daughter I was one of the good guys," the message read. "And tell yours the same." I deleted the message and closed my eyes, letting the van carry me toward whatever came next. The wedding was over. The real celebration would come at dawn if we survived it. Family emergency. I told the coat check girl, grabbing my wrap with hands that barely trembled. "Food poisoning, several guests, very unfortunate." She nodded sympathetically while I typed a quick message to Marcus. "Not feeling well. Think it was the shrimp. Give Jennifer my love. Sorry to leave early." My phone immediately lit up with responses I didn't have time to read. 10 minutes until extraction, and thanks to Uncle Robert's warning, I knew my original exit route was compromised. Emma had probably already reported my departure patterns to her handlers. I slipped out through the service entrance Robert had shown me, avoiding the main parking lot where Brotherhood operatives would be waiting. My modest Honda sat there like bait in a trap, probably already rigged with a tracker or worse. Instead, I made my way to the overflow lot where staff vehicles were parked. A catering van had keys tucked above the visor standard practice for events where multiple drivers might need access. I'd noticed it during my security assessment when I'd arrived, a habit that never switched off even at family gatherings. The engine turned over smoothly, and I pulled out slowly, just another service vehicle, leaving after a long event. In my rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of two men converging on my Honda, their body language aggressive when they found it empty. Phoenix departing via alternative route. I spoke into my secure phone once I'd cleared the country club grounds. Primary vehicle compromised, en route to rally point. Copy Phoenix. Martinez's voice crackled through. Team is standing by. Be advised, local law enforcement reported suspicious activity near your apartment. Do not return home. Home. A studio apartment carefully decorated to seem lived in, but containing nothing of real value. Everything that mattered was in a safe house the Brotherhood didn't know about. Still, the violation stung. They'd been watching me closer than we'd realized. I drove carefully, taking a circuitous route to ensure I wasn't followed. The bridesmaid dress was impractical for what came next, but I'd planned for that. 3 blocks from the rally point, I pulled into an all-night gym where I maintained a membership specifically for moments like this. The locker I'd rented 2 years ago contained everything I needed: tactical pants, a black moisture-wicking shirt, boots, and a jacket with concealed armor panels. I changed quickly, stuffing the bridesmaid dress into a trash bag. The woman who emerged from the locker room looked nothing like the one who'd entered. My reflection in the mirror showed someone my family had never met. Hair pulled back in a severe bun face, clean of makeup, eyes hard with purpose. This was Phoenix, not Casey Morrison. This was who I'd been for 2 years while playing the role of family disappointment. The rally point was an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of place that looked deserted but hummed with hidden activity. I parked the stolen van 2 blocks away and approached on foot, following protocols drilled into me during training. Phoenix, approaching from the south, I announced through my earpiece. Visual confirmed, came the response. Clear to enter. The moment I stepped through the camouflaged entrance, the transformation was complete. No more wedding reception, no more family dynamics. This was my real world where competence was recognized and the stakes were measured in lives. The command center had been established in record time. Banks of monitors showed real-time surveillance of 5 target cities. Analysts hunched over keyboards tracking Brotherhood communications. Field teams checked weapons and reviewed tactical plans. Phoenix Martinez appeared already in full tactical gear. Thank God, Chen's intel is gold. We've identified their entire financial network. He handed me a tablet showing fund transfers, shell companies, and a web of connections that made my stomach drop. There was Marcus's firm unwittingly processing millions in terrorist funds. And at the center, like a spider in a web, sat Jonathan Hartwell. My brother's father-in-law, I said quietly. Your family hit the lottery of bad connections. Martinez agreed. But that's tomorrow's problem. Tonight we stop an attack. Briefing room, 5 minutes. I made my way through the controlled chaos, exchanging nods with team members I'd worked with for 2 years. Here I wasn't the failed daughter or the security guard. I was Agent Phoenix, tactical team leader, with a reputation for precision under pressure. The briefing room was packed with 50 agents representing multiple agencies. Director Thornton stood at the front, her expression grave as satellite images filled the screen behind her. Ladies and gentlemen, we are 7 hours from the largest coordinated domestic terror attack in our nation's history. Her voice carried absolute authority. 5 cities, 30 million Americans at risk. If we fail tonight, the economic and human cost will be catastrophic. She clicked through images of power stations, financial centers, water treatment facilities, each one marked with red indicators showing Brotherhood positions. The enemy has spent 2 years positioning assets. They have inside help at every target location. They expect to upload ransomware at 0500 hours, followed by physical destruction of infrastructure at 0600. They plan to blame foreign actors spurring military retaliation while they profit from the chaos. My tablet chimed with new intelligence. The data from Chen's SD card had been fully analyzed. I raised my hand. Director New Intel suggests a modification to their timeline. They know we're moving. Chen's extraction spooked them. They might accelerate. How reliable? Source was inside their financial division for 3 years. Died getting us this intelligence. I didn't mention it was at my brother's wedding. I'd stake my life on it. Thornton nodded. Then we accelerate too. Original timeline had us moving at 0400. We go at 0300 instead. 1 hour to final prep. The room erupted into controlled activity as team leaders grabbed their packets. I found mine marked Team Alpha Stratton Industries. My home turf for 2 years where I'd walked every hallway, memorized every security protocol, identified every weakness. Phoenix. Agent Sarah Liu from Cyber approached. You know Stratton better than anyone. Their plan involves overriding safety protocols on the power grid management systems. If they succeed, 3 states go dark. I finished. Hospitals, schools, everything in January. People will freeze to death. Can you get us to the server room without triggering their early warning systems? I thought about the building I'd patrolled for 2 years, the hidden routes I'd mapped, the security flaws I'd documented. I can get you anywhere in that building with my eyes closed. Good. You're leading the cyber team insertion while tactical takes the main floors. She paused. Phoenix, your supervisor, the real David Chen, already extracted, I said, thinking of Michael Park's sacrifice. He's safe. She nodded, relief flickering across her features. Small miracles. Gear up. We roll in 40 minutes. I made my way to the equipment room where tactical gear was being distributed like a well-oiled machine. Body armor, communications equipment, weapons. Each piece familiar from countless training sessions, but carrying new weight, knowing this was real. Ma'am. A young agent approached nervously. I'm Thompson. This is my first major op. Any advice? I looked at him, barely older than Marcus, eager to prove himself. Trust your training. Watch your 6. And remember, the people we're stopping tonight think they're patriots. They believe their cause is just. That makes them more dangerous than common criminals. Yes, ma'am, thank you. As he hurried off, I thought about Tommy Brightwater, who'd bounced me on his knee as a child, about Emma, who'd shared my dorm room freshman year, about the caterer who'd tried to assassinate a federal agent at a wedding. The Brotherhood didn't recruit monsters. They recruited ordinary people and convinced them monstrous acts were patriotic. My secure phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then recognized the code Robert had taught me 20 years ago when he was still Uncle Bobby the cop, showing his niece basic safety signals. Package secured. Your mother knows something's wrong. Maintaining cover, but prepared. Watch for secondary devices at Stratton. R. I deleted the message, grateful for an uncle I'd never truly known, but who'd been watching over me all along. How many other secrets did my family hide? How many other ghosts walked among us at Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings? Phoenix, Martinez called out. Attorney General wants a word. I found the secure communication station where Attorney General Patricia Hughes waited on encrypted video. I'd briefed her twice before, but never on an operation of this magnitude. Agent Morrison. She began without preamble. I've reviewed your assessments. You've been under for 2 years, maintaining a cover that would break most agents. Are you prepared for what comes next? Ma'am. When this is over, win or lose, your cover is blown. Your family will know everything. The media will dig into every aspect of your life. Casey Morrison. The security guard ceases to exist. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my father's toast, wishing for children who made him proud every single day. About Marcus painting me as a failure to his new in-laws. About 2 years of condescension and pity from people I loved. I've been prepared since the day I took this assignment, ma'am. Good. Because what you've built, the intelligence you've gathered, it's the only reason we have a chance tonight. Whatever happens, know that your country is grateful. The connection ended, leaving me with the weight of her words. Gratitude from your country was cold comfort when your family saw you as a disappointment, but it was what I'd chosen. Duty over recognition. Service over understanding. 30 minutes, someone called out. Final equipment check. I returned to my gear, methodically checking each piece. Sig Sauer P320 in a tactical holster, extra magazines, flex cuffs, tactical knife, communications equipment with encrypted channels, everything I'd need to lead a team into danger. Around me, 49 other agents made similar preparations. Some prayed quietly. Others reviewed building schematics one more time. A few made what might be final phone calls to loved ones. I thought about calling my mother, hearing her voice one more time before everything changed. But what would I say? Hi, Mom, I'm about to lead an assault team against domestic terrorists, including your nephew and Dad's best friend. Instead, I pulled up a photo on my phone. Last Christmas, the whole family gathered around the tree. Dad in his usual chair, Mom beside him, Marcus and I flanking them, Emma in the background already counting brotherhood money, Tommy raising a glass already selling out his oath, and me smiling blandly, playing the role of failed daughter, while secretly carrying the weight of national security. It's time, Martinez announced. I deleted the photo and stood feeling the armor settle around me like a second skin. Around the room, my colleagues did the same. 50 federal agents preparing to prevent catastrophe, while the rest of the country slept peacefully. Remember, Director Thornton's voice carried over the comm system. We strike simultaneously. 5 cities, 1 moment. Success depends on coordination. You are authorized to use all necessary force to prevent this attack. Failure is not an option. We moved toward our assigned vehicles with practiced efficiency. My team consisted of 8 specialists, each chosen for specific skills. Liu for cyber warfare, Rodriguez for explosives, Park for infiltration, Thompson the rookie eager to prove himself. As I climbed into the lead vehicle, my phone showed one final message from Marcus. Hope you feel better. Dad's drunk and telling embarrassing stories about us. You're not missing much. If only he knew what I was really not missing. In 3 hours, I'd either be dead or a hero. Either way, Casey Morrison's story was ending tonight. All teams, this is control. Thornton's voice filled our earpieces. You are green light. Repeat, you are green light. Godspeed. The convoy rolled out into the night, heading toward 5 different targets in 5 different cities. Behind us, the warehouse returned to its disguise of abandonment. Ahead waited the Brotherhood's army, believing they were about to reshape America. They had no idea Phoenix was coming home to roost. The convoy moved through the empty streets like shadows, our vehicles running dark, with only minimal lights. Inside our tactical van, my team reviewed the Stratton Industries blueprints one final time. 2 years of walking those halls had given me insights no blueprint could provide, details that might mean the difference between success and catastrophe. Maintenance shaft on the northeast corner, I pointed out. Security cameras have a 12-second blind spot during their rotation pattern. That's our entry point for the cyber team. Liu nodded, her fingers flying across her tactical tablet. Once we're in the server room, I need 15 minutes to identify and neutralize their ransomware, 20 if they've installed redundancies. You'll have it, I promised. Through my earpiece, I could hear similar conversations from the other 4 teams converging on their targets. In Philadelphia, Team Bravo was approaching a water treatment facility. In Chicago, Team Charlie targeted a financial processing center. Denver and Seattle had their own nightmares to prevent. Phoenix, this is control. Director Thornton's voice cut through. Be advised, NSA intercepted Brotherhood chatter. They know something's happening, but not what. Expect enhanced security. Copy that, Control. I switched to my team channel. All right, people, they're nervous, but not alerted. That works in our favor. Nervous people make mistakes. Rodriguez, my explosives expert, raised a concern. If they've wired the building... They have, I confirmed. My investigation identified 3 likely points, but they won't detonate unless they're certain they've been compromised. The Brotherhood wants to frame this as foreign terrorism. Remember, a building that explodes while their people are inside doesn't fit that narrative. Unless they're planning to die as martyrs, Thompson suggested quietly. The van fell silent. It was a possibility we'd all considered but not voiced. True believers didn't always follow logical patterns. Then we don't give them time to make that choice, I said firmly. We hit fast, hard, and decisive. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be over. My phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Martinez, leading Team Delta to the Seattle target. Surveillance shows normal patterns at all locations. Either they're very good or very oblivious. I thought about David Chen, the financial architect who'd attended my brother's wedding just hours ago, confident in his plans. About Tommy Brightwater, who'd tried to recruit me between champagne toasts. They weren't oblivious. They were arrogant, convinced their inside information and careful planning made them untouchable. 2 minutes to staging area, our driver announced. I keyed my radio to address the other team converging on Stratton. All units, this is Phoenix. Remember, we have employees inside who think they're working for America. They've been lied to, manipulated. If possible, we take them alive. They're victims too. Roger that, Phoenix, came the response from Captain Walsh, leading the main tactical team. Rules of engagement understood. Non-lethal unless directly threatened. The van pulled into an abandoned parking structure 3 blocks from Stratton Industries. From here, we'd approach on foot using the urban landscape I'd memorized during countless late-night patrols. Gear check, I ordered, and my team ran through final preparations. Night vision equipment, tactical communications, cyber warfare tools. Everything needed to prevent 30 million Americans from waking up to darkness and chaos. Phoenix Liu pulled me aside. There's something else. The financial data from Chen's package. Your brother's firm processed a major transfer yesterday. $50 million. The timestamp shows it happened during his wedding. During the reception. While Marcus was dancing with his new wife, his company was unknowingly funding mass murder. The irony was bitter. Document everything I told her. Marcus and his firm are victims here, but they'll need proof of that when the investigations start. She nodded, understanding the personal stake. We'll make sure the evidence is clear. Your brother was used, not complicit. I appreciated the gesture, even as I wondered how Marcus would handle learning his success had been built on blood money. Would he blame himself? Would he blame me for not warning him? 2 years of lies had consequences that would ripple far beyond tonight. Movement. Rodriguez's voice crackled through our earpieces. He'd taken an overwatch position with a scope. 3 vehicles just arrived at Stratton. They're not scheduled maintenance. I checked my watch, 0247 hours, 13 minutes ahead of our planned breach. Brotherhood, Walsh asked. Confirmed. I've got positive ID on 2 known operatives. They're unloading equipment from the vans. Looks like, Christ, those are explosive charges, enough to level the building. My blood ran cold. We'd assumed they'd want the building intact to sell their foreign terrorism narrative. But if they'd decided on a different ending, they're accelerating because Chen disappeared, I realized aloud. They think he flipped, so they're destroying evidence. If they blow Stratton... The power grid fails anyway, Liu finished. Manual destruction instead of cyber attack, but same result. Maybe worse. Control, this is Phoenix. Situation has changed. Brotherhood is rigging Stratton for demolition. Request permission to advance timeline. Phoenix Control. You are authorized. All teams, timeline advanced. Execute, execute, execute. The calm professionalism in Thornton's voice belied the chaos this caused. Across 5 cities, federal agents were scrambling to adjust their plans. But this was why we trained for contingencies, why we prepared for the unexpected. My team takes the server room, I announced. Walsh, your team prevents those explosives from being armed. Move. We burst from the van like shadows given purpose. The 3-block approach that should have taken 10 careful minutes was covered in 3. My knowledge of the area proved invaluable, leading my team through service alleys and maintenance corridors I'd mapped during my cover assignment. Overwatch, this is Phoenix. Status on those explosives. They've placed 2 devices working on a third, northeast corner and primary support columns. Professional job. These aren't amateurs. No, they weren't. The Brotherhood had recruited former military discharged cops, disillusioned veterans, people with skills and grievances convinced that destroying America was the only way to save it. We reached the maintenance access I'd identified. As predicted, the security camera was mid-rotation, giving us our window. I quickly entered the code I'd memorized, blessing the laziness of Stratton's security chief, who hadn't changed it in 18 months. "We're in," I whispered. "Lou Thompson Park with me to the servers. Rodriguez help Walsh's team with those explosives. Everyone else secure our exit route." The maintenance shaft was cramped and dark, but I'd crawled through it dozens of times during my reconnaissance. What looked like routine security checks had really been preparation for tonight. Every vent memorized, every access point cataloged. "Phoenix, Walsh. We're in position, but shit. They've got the main lobby. Count 12 hostiles all armed. They're not here to plant bombs and leave. They're making a stand." A firefight would alert every Brotherhood cell in the city. Our simultaneous strikes depended on surprise. If one location raised an alarm, "Can you infiltrate without engagement?" I asked while continuing to crawl toward the server room. "Negative. They've established overlapping fields of fire. Military precision." "Wait, holy hell. Phoenix, I've got eyes on the lobby monitors. They've taken hostages. Night shift maintenance crew, 6 civilians." My heart sank. Hostages changed everything. We couldn't use gas, couldn't risk crossfire. The Brotherhood had adapted their plan brilliantly, using innocent lives as shields. "Control Phoenix. We have a hostage situation at Stratton. 6 civilians. Request crisis negotiation team." "Negative, Phoenix. No time. Other sites are breaching now. You're on your own." On our own. 6 innocent people whose only crime was working the night shift to feed their families. People I'd probably passed in the halls, shared elevator rides with, nodded to during my patrols. Now their lives depended on decisions I made in the next few minutes. "Lou," I said quietly. "Change of plans. Can you trigger a localized power failure?" "Just the lobby." I'd need access to the building's power management system, not just the servers. "I know where that is. Thompson, you're with Lou to the servers. Park, you're with me." We reached a junction in the maintenance system. I pointed Lou and Thompson toward the server room, then led Park in the opposite direction. The power management system was in the basement, protected by security I'd tested dozens of times while building my mental map of vulnerabilities. "Phoenix, we're running out of time," Walsh reported. "They're almost finished with the explosives. And wait, I recognize one of the hostiles. It's Brightwater. Tommy Brightwater is leading the lobby team. My father's best friend, the man who taught me to ride a bike, now holding innocent people at gunpoint ready to murder them for his cause. The betrayal cut deep, but I pushed emotion aside. There'd be time for that later, if we survived. "Copy. Park, we need to move faster." We dropped from the maintenance shaft into a utility corridor. 2 years of memorizing guard rotations told me we had 90 seconds before the next patrol. But when we rounded the corner, those patterns meant nothing. A Brotherhood operative stood guard at the power control room, assault rifle casual in his hands. I recognized him from surveillance photos. Marcus Webb, former Army Ranger discharged for excessive force in Afghanistan. Now he'd brought his war home. Park looked at me, hand moving to his weapon. A gunshot here would echo through the building, alerting everyone. But Webb was between us and our objective, and the clock was ticking toward catastrophe. I made a decision that would have horrified my father, but came naturally to Phoenix. Stepping into the open, I affected the slightly confused expression of Casey Morrison, night shift security guard. "Excuse me," I said, letting my voice carry a nervous tremor. "I'm supposed to check this sector, but I think I'm lost. This is my first week on nights, and..." Webb turned assault rifle swinging toward me. His finger tensed on the trigger as he processed the threat. A security guard in the wrong place at the wrong time. Behind him, Park moved like smoke. "You shouldn't be here," Webb growled. "This area is restricted." "I'm sorry, I have the worst sense of direction. My supervisor is going to kill me. I'm supposed to be checking the server room, but somehow I ended up..." I babbled on, playing the harmless incompetent, while Park closed the distance. Webb's expression shifted from suspicion to contempt. Another useless rent-a-cop, too stupid to be a threat. He started to key his radio, probably to report a minor complication. Park struck with surgical precision. A blood choke perfectly applied, cutting off circulation to Webb's brain without crushing his windpipe. The big man fought for 3 seconds before going limp. We caught him before he hit the ground, easing him down silently. "Nice performance," Park whispered. "Almost believed it myself." 2 years of practice, I replied, already moving to the power control panel. My fingers flew across the controls, isolating the lobby's electrical grid from the rest of the building. "Lou, you've got 60 seconds before I cut lobby power. Walsh, on my mark, you go in dark." "Phoenix, what about the explosives?" Rodriguez's voice was tense. "I'm looking at the charges. These are sophisticated with redundant triggers. If I cut the wrong wire..." "Trust your training," I said, even as my hands continued their work. "You're the best EOD specialist I know." "No pressure," he muttered. I found the circuit I needed and took a breath. 6 hostages, 12 Brotherhood operatives, explosives that could kill thousands, and somewhere in that lobby my father's best friend had chosen terrorism over every oath he'd ever taken. "All teams, this is Phoenix. Breach in 5, 4, 3, 2, mark." I killed the power. The building plunged into darkness just as our night vision-equipped teams struck. Through my earpiece, I heard the coordinated assault flash bang grenades, shouted commands, the controlled chaos of tactical entry. "Server room secured," Lou reported. "Beginning countermeasures. Their ransomware is sophisticated, but got it. Neutralizing now." 2 explosives diffused, Rodriguez announced. "Working on the 3rd. This one's trickier, different design." "Lobby hostile down. Hostile down. I need medics for the hostages." Walsh's team was in the thick of it. I raced back through the corridors, Park covering our 6. We needed to reach the lobby to help secure the scene. But as we rounded the final corner, the emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. There, standing in the corridor like a ghost from my past, was Tommy Brightwater. His tactical gear was splattered with blood, his face twisted with rage and betrayal. "Casey..." He stared at me in shock, processing my tactical gear. The weapon in my hands, the federal agent where his friend's disappointment daughter should be. "What? No, you're just a security guard." Richard said, "Drop the weapon, Tommy." I commanded my Sig Sauer, trained on center mass. "You're Phoenix," he breathed. "The inside source. We've been hunting you for months and you were..." Christ. Richard's failure daughter, playing us all. "Last warning, drop the weapon." His face cycled through emotions, shock, rage, and finally a bitter acceptance. He never knew. Did he? Richard spent 2 years mocking his own daughter while she was... This is perfect. The great Chief Morrison, blind to what was right in front of him. "The weapon, Tommy, now." "You know what the best part is?" He smiled coldly. "When this comes out, when he learns his little girl has been lying to him, it'll destroy him. His pride, his reputation, everything. You've humiliated him worse than the Brotherhood ever could." His hand twitched toward his rifle. "Don't," I shouted. "I won't go to prison," he said simply. "And Richard needs to know his daughter killed his best friend. That's my gift to him." He raised his weapon. I fired twice, center mass. The pattern my father had taught me at 8 years old, refined by federal training into instinct. Tommy Brightwater crumpled to the floor, his blood spreading across linoleum I'd walked 1,000 times. His eyes found mine one last time. "Tell Richard." He coughed blood frothing his lips. Tell him we're not the enemy. We were trying to save America from people like you. No, I said, quietly kneeling beside the man who'd been family. You were trying to murder 30 million Americans. That's not salvation, that's genocide. He died with my father's name on his lips. Phoenix lobby secure. Walsh's voice cut through. All hostiles down or in custody. Hostages are traumatized but unharmed. Final explosive diffused, Rodriguez added. Building is safe. I stood slowly looking down at Tommy Brightwater's body. Somewhere in this city, my father was probably sleeping off too much wedding scotch, unaware that his best friend had died a terrorist and his daughter had pulled the trigger. Control this is Phoenix. Stratton Industries secured. Brotherhood cell neutralized. 6 civilian hostages rescued. Confirming server room Sawin. Ransomware neutralized, Lou reported. Power grid is safe. Financial records secured, including evidence of money laundering through Morrison Financial Group. Morrison Financial Group, Marcus's company. My brother's pride and joy now forever tainted by terrorism connections he never knew about. Phoenix, this is control. Director Thornton's voice carried satisfaction and exhaustion. All 5 sites report success. The attack has been prevented. Casualties minimal. Outstanding work, all teams. Around me, federal agents were processing suspects, collecting evidence, beginning the massive task of documenting the scene. In a few hours, news vans would crowd the parking lot. Reporters would demand answers. The Brotherhood's plan had failed, but the aftermath was just beginning. Phoenix Park appeared at my elbow. You okay? I looked at him, then back at Tommy's body. I knew him my whole life. He taught me to fish, came to every birthday until I joined the agency. How do you reconcile that with this? You don't, Park said simply. You just accept that people are complicated and sometimes they choose wrong. Come on, dawn's coming. He was right. Through the lobby's shattered windows, I could see the first hints of light on the horizon. Dawn. When the Brotherhood had planned for America to wake up to darkness, we'd given them light instead. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Hey sis, hope you're feeling better. Crazy night at the wedding after you left. Some drama with catering staff and Uncle Rob got super drunk. Dad and Uncle Tommy disappeared for hours. Anyway, Jennifer and I are heading to the airport for our honeymoon. Love you. If only he knew what drama had really unfolded. If only he knew where Dad's best friend had disappeared to. But he'd learn soon enough. They all would. Agent Morrison, a crime scene tech, approached. We need your statement about the shooting. Of course, I said, taking one last look at the man who'd chosen hatred over family. Let's do this by the book. Tommy would have wanted that, the old Tommy anyway. As I followed the tech away from the body, Lou intercepted me. Phoenix, there's something else. The financial records show Jennifer's father, Hartwell, was the money man. He funded this entire operation. My brother was on his way to a honeymoon with a woman whose father had tried to destroy America. The complications were multiplying by the minute. Document everything, I ordered. Every connection, every transaction. When this goes public, it's going to be a nightmare, Lou finished. For a lot of families, including yours. Yes, it was. But as I looked around at the prevented catastrophe at the hostages being treated by medics at the city that would wake up to functioning power and water and financial systems, I knew it was worth it. My family's comfort wasn't worth 30 million lives. Ma'am Thompson approached his rookie nervousness replaced by combat-tested confidence. What happens now? I checked my watch. 0612 hours. In 12 hours, I'd gone from bridesmaid to terrorist hunter to killer. In the next 12, I'd have to face the consequences of 2 years of lies. Now we process the scene file, our reports, and prepare for the media storm, I told him. And Thompson, good work tonight. You did the Academy proud. He beamed, reminding me why we did this job. Not for recognition from family or understanding from loved ones, but to ensure young agents like Thompson had a country worth protecting. Phoenix, Walsh called out. You need to see this. He led me to a captured Brotherhood operative being treated for minor wounds. I recognized him as one of Chen's financial advisors, a man who'd probably processed millions in terror funds. He wants to make a deal, Walsh explained. Says he has information about other cells, but he'll only talk to Phoenix. I approached the man who looked up with desperate eyes. You're Phoenix the ghost who haunted our operations. I am. They said you were a legend, a story to scare recruits. He laughed bitterly. Casey Morrison. We looked right at you for 2 years and never saw it. Your cover was perfect. The information I prompted, not interested in compliments from terrorists. There are 3 other cells, smaller, but positioned for revenge attacks if we failed here. He met my eyes. I'll tell you everything, but I want immunity. I was just moving money. I never hurt anyone. You funded mass murder, I corrected. That's not innocent, but talk to the Attorney General's office. They'll decide what deal you deserve. As Walsh led him away, I realized our night wasn't over. 3 more cells to root out more lives to save. The Brotherhood was like a hydra, and we'd only cut off one head. My secure phone rang. Director Thornton. Outstanding work, Phoenix. But I need you to prepare for Phase 2. In 3 hours, we go public with the operation. Your identity will be protected initially, but given the family connections, it won't stay secret long, I finished. I understand, Director. Do you? Your father is a respected former police chief. Your brother runs a financial firm now tied to terrorism. There will be investigations, media scrutiny, public judgment. Your family will be at the center of a firestorm. I thought about Dad at the wedding dismissing me to his friends. Marcus painting me as a failure. Jennifer's casual cruelty. They judged me for 2 years. Now the world would judge them. They'll survive, I said. Just like the 30 million people who'll have power this morning because we did our jobs. Spoken like a true agent. Get some rest if you can. The real storm starts at 9 a.m. She hung up, leaving me standing in the ruins of what had almost been a massacre. Around me, crime scene tape was going up. Evidence was being cataloged, the machinery of justice grinding into motion. Outside, full dawn had arrived. The city was waking up, people heading to work, children to school, all oblivious to how close they'd come to disaster. That ignorance was our gift. To them, the blessing of normal life that we'd killed to protect. Phoenix, Lou called out. I've isolated the financial records regarding your brother's firm. Want me to flag them for special handling? I considered it. I could protect Marcus, minimize his firm's exposure, use my position to shield my family from the worst of what was coming. It would be easy to justify. He was innocent after all, just a pawn in Hartwell's game. No, I decided. Process them like any other evidence. My family gets no special treatment. That's not who we are. Lou nodded approvingly. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice, both tonight and 2 years ago. As she walked away, I allowed myself a moment of pure exhaustion. In 3 hours, the press conference would begin. My face would be hidden, my name redacted, but the truth would start its inevitable journey toward disclosure. Somewhere in this city, my mother was probably making breakfast. Dad was nursing a hangover. Marcus was boarding a plane with his new wife. None of them knew their world had already ended. The bomb that would destroy their comfortable assumptions wasn't made of C4 or wired to a timer. It was made of truth, and I'd lit the fuse myself. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Uncle Robert. Saw the news alerts. Well done, Phoenix. When you're ready, I'll be here. Family is complicated, but it endures. Even this. I hoped he was right. But as I looked at Tommy Brightwater's blood on my hands, I wondered if some betrayals cut too deep to heal. In saving America, I destroyed my family's illusions. Time would tell if they'd forgive me for it. The congressional hearing room was packed to capacity when I entered at 14:37 hours, exactly 2 weeks after the prevented attacks. In that time, the media storm had only intensified. Every detail of my life, my family's lives, and the Brotherhood operation had been dissected by pundits, politicians, and an increasingly divided public. I took my seat at the witness table facing the House Intelligence Committee. Behind me, cameras from every major network focused their lenses ready to broadcast every word, every expression, every moment of what some called vindication and others called a show trial. Agent Morrison, Committee Chairman Representative Williams, began his tone neutral, but eyes sharp. You are here voluntarily to provide testimony about Operation Phoenix and the events of January 15th. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. I affirmed, knowing that the whole truth was more complex than any oath could capture. Let's begin with your recruitment, Williams said. You claim you were approached by federal authorities immediately after graduating from the police academy. Yet records show you quit the force after 1 day. Can you explain this discrepancy? I leaned into the microphone, choosing my words carefully. The 1-day employment was a cover story necessary for operational security. I served 437 days as an active federal agent, including training and deployment. The fiction of my failure was required to establish credibility for my undercover role. A fiction that devastated your father. Representative Jackson interjected, her voice carrying judgment. Chief Morrison spent 2 years believing his daughter was a disappointment. Was that deception really necessary? Behind me, I knew my parents sat in the gallery. Dad had insisted on attending, on hearing everything, on facing the truth publicly, as he'd spread the lie publicly. Congresswoman, the Brotherhood specifically targeted law enforcement families. My supposed failure created distance that protected my family while allowing me to embed deeply in their operations. That distance saved their lives when the Brotherhood attempted to use families as leverage. Yet your cousin Emma Morrison was recruited by the Brotherhood, Representative Chen noted, studying his notes. How does that square with your claims of protecting family? Emma, currently in federal custody, cooperating fully, her information having prevented 3 more massacres, but her betrayal remained a wound that wouldn't heal. Emma's recruitment was unrelated to my operation, I explained. Financial desperation made her vulnerable. The Brotherhood exploited that vulnerability before we became aware of her involvement. Let's discuss the financial aspects. Williams redirected. Your brother Marcus Morrison's firm processed $347 million in Brotherhood funds. You claim he was unaware. On the screens around the room, financial documents appeared. Marcus's signature on dozens of transactions, each one technically legitimate, collectively damning. His firm had survived barely, but his reputation was destroyed. He testified yesterday, maintaining his innocence while acknowledging his failure to detect the money laundering. My brother was deceived by sophisticated financial manipulation orchestrated by Jonathan Hartwell, his father-in-law. The transactions were structured to appear as legitimate infrastructure investments. Without the intelligence we gathered, they would have remained undetected. Convenient, Jackson muttered. Your brother is innocent, your cousin was desperate, your father was protective. Everyone has an excuse except the dead. Congresswoman. I kept my voice level despite the provocation. Officer Thomas Brightwater can't testify about his motivations, she continued. You shot him during the operation. Some say it was execution, not self-defense. The room tensed. This was the heart of the political divide: heroes or vigilantes, protectors or deep state operators, salvation or manipulation. Officer Brightwater made a choice to raise his weapon against federal agents. I responded according to training and rules of engagement. His death was suicide by cop, documented by body camera footage and witness testimony. Footage that's classified, Jackson pressed. Witnesses who are all federal agents. Convenient. The footage is classified to protect ongoing operations, Director Thornton interjected from her seat behind me. Not to hide wrongdoing. Williams gavelled for order. Let's move to the cyber attacks. Agent Morrison, can you explain how 20 million Americans' financial data was exposed? This was safer ground, technically complex, but politically neutral. I walked the committee through the Brotherhood's sophisticated malware, our successful countermeasures, and the unfortunate reality that some data was exposed before we could stop it. The emails claiming government responsibility, Representative Park asked, those reached 40 million Americans, creating lasting distrust. How do we repair that damage? By continuing to tell the truth, I said simply, by showing through actions and transparency that we protected American lives and interests. Trust rebuilds slowly, but it does rebuild. Does it? Chen pulled up social media feeds on the room's displays. Agent Morrison labeled as hero and villain. Your family under constant scrutiny. Death threats against your parents. Your brother's business destroyed. Was stopping the Brotherhood worth the cost to innocent people? I thought about the 30 million Americans who'd woken up with power, water, and functioning financial systems. The families shopping at Water Tower Place, attending church in Dallas, dropping children at school in Portland, all unaware how close they'd come to becoming statistics. Congressman, every agent knows the job may require sacrifice. We hope that sacrifice is only ours, but sometimes it spreads to those we love. My family has paid a price for my service, but 30 million Americans didn't pay the ultimate price because we acted. That mathematics is harsh but clear. Let's discuss those actions, Williams said. The raid on the farmhouse, 7 emotionally compromised agents conducting an unsanctioned assault. Some call it heroism. Others call it rogue operation that endangered hostages. The footage played on screens our desperate assault to save our families. Watching it now, I saw every tactical error emotion had caused every risk that could have ended in disaster. But I also saw Thompson taking a bullet while providing cover. Chen cradling his daughter after 2 days of terror. My parents alive because we'd refused to follow protocols that would have let them die. We were federal agents whose families were kidnapped by terrorists, I stated. We had actionable intelligence and limited time. Director Thornton provided unofficial support, recognizing that sometimes regulations must bend to save lives. Every hostage was recovered safely. Through luck more than tactics, Jackson argued. You compromised operational integrity for personal reasons. Yes, I admitted, surprising the room. I put family before protocol. I'd do it again. The Brotherhood counted on us being machines following rules while they murdered our loved ones. They discovered we're human. That humanity saved lives. The committee exchanged glances. My admission of emotional compromise didn't fit the narrative either side wanted. Heroes weren't supposed to acknowledge weakness. Villains weren't supposed to save everyone. Agent Morrison. Williams leaned forward. Let me ask you directly. Do you regret your actions? Any of them? I considered the question, knowing my answer would be replayed endlessly. I regret the necessity. I regret that good people like Officer Brightwater were corrupted by extremism. I regret that my family suffered for my choices. But I don't regret stopping the Brotherhood. I don't regret saving lives. I don't regret serving my country even when that service required deception and caused pain. Even lying to your family for 2 years. I turned, looking directly at my parents in the gallery. Mom nodded encouragingly. Dad met my eyes steadily, 2 weeks of revelation having aged him, but also somehow strengthened him. Lying to my family was the hardest part of my service, I said, still looking at them. Every dismissive comment, every expression of disappointment, every moment of being seen as a failure cut deeply. But their genuine reactions sold my cover. Their real disappointment saved lives. I'm sorry for the pain I caused them, but not for the reason I caused it. Your father has something to say about that, Williams noted. Chief Morrison requested to provide testimony. Given his distinguished service and unique perspective, we've agreed. My stomach dropped. Dad hadn't mentioned wanting to testify. As he made his way to the witness table, I saw him clearly older, grayed by stress, but walking with purpose. Chief Morrison. Williams began after swearing him in. You've heard your daughter's testimony. What's your response?" Dad adjusted the microphone, his police training evident in his bearing despite retirement. "Mr. Chairman, I spent 30 years in law enforcement. I thought I understood sacrifice, duty, deception in service of justice. I was wrong." The room stilled, everyone leaning forward. "For 2 years, I told anyone who'd listen that my daughter was a disappointment, a failure, a quitter who couldn't handle real police work." His voice cracked slightly. "I said these things at family gatherings, public events, even at my son's wedding. I believed them completely." He paused, composing himself. "My daughter let me believe them. She endured my dismissal, my condescension, my public humiliation because her cover required it. She sacrificed not just her safety, but her relationship with her family to protect strangers. That's not failure, that's heroism I couldn't have managed." "Chief Morrison," Jackson interjected, "your former partner died in this operation. Officer Brightwater was your friend for decades. How do you reconcile that?" Dad's jaw tightened. "Tommy Brightwater betrayed his oath, his city, and yes, our friendship. He made choices that would have killed thousands. My daughter stopped him. If that puts us on opposite sides, then I'm proud to stand with her. Even though she lied to you." "Congressman, I've had 2 weeks to think about lies and truth. My daughter's lies saved lives. Tommy's truths would have ended them. I'll take noble deception over honest terrorism every time." "Dad," I whispered, but he wasn't done. "You want to know the real tragedy here?" He addressed the committee but spoke to the cameras. "It's not that federal agents had to lie to do their jobs. It's that we've created a society where protecting America makes you suspicious, where stopping mass murder gets you hauled before committees to justify saving lives. My daughter and her colleagues prevented catastrophe, and instead of universal gratitude, they face political theater." Williams gavelled as the gallery erupted in mixed applause and protests. "Chief Morrison, please constrain yourself to answering questions." "I'll answer your questions," Dad said firmly, "but I won't sit quietly while patriots are painted as villains. My daughter gave up everything, family reputation, normal life, to protect people who now question her motives. That's the real crime here." He was escorted back to the gallery, but his words echoed. The committee struggled to regain control, eventually calling a recess. As I stood to stretch, my phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Watching on C-SPAN, Dad's right. I'm sorry for what I said. You saved us all." Small reconciliation, but reconciliation nonetheless. The committee reconvened, spending 3 more hours dissecting every decision, every action, every consequence. Through it all, the fundamental divide remained those who saw necessary deception and those who saw dangerous precedent. As the hearing finally concluded, Representative Williams offered closing remarks. "Agent Morrison, your service prevented massive loss of life. That's undeniable. But the methods required, the lies, the infiltration, the personal costs, raise questions about what we're willing to sacrifice for security. This committee will continue investigating to ensure proper oversight of federal operations." I stood to leave, knowing the investigation would continue indefinitely. Politics demanded heroes and villains, not the complex reality of people making impossible choices. But as I passed the gallery, citizens I'd never met nodded respectfully. Some whispered, "Thank you." Others looked away, unsure whether I represented salvation or threat. Outside the hearing room, media swarmed. Director Thornton and security created a pathway, but one reporter's question penetrated the chaos. "Agent Morrison, would you do it all again?" I paused, considering. 2 years of lies, family relationships shattered and slowly rebuilding, friends dead or imprisoned, public service rewarded with suspicion, but also 30 million Americans alive, infrastructure intact, children attending school safely, families shopping without fear. "Yes," I said simply, "every time." The answer would be debated, endlessly parsed for meaning used by both supporters and critics. But it was truth as close as I could come to it. In a world of dangerous lies and noble deceptions, sometimes that had to be enough. The text from Marcus came at 06:13 hours 3 weeks after the congressional hearing. Jennifer left. Lawyers say the marriage can be annulled given the circumstances. I don't blame you anymore, but I need you to know the cost. I stared at the message in my temporary apartment, the safe house I'd called home, since death threats made my actual residence uninhabitable. Through the window, D.C. sprawled in dawn light, a city I'd saved, but could no longer walk through freely. The cost. Marcus had no idea how thoroughly I'd cataloged it. Emma serving 5 to 10 in federal prison, Sophie in witness protection with their mother. Dad retired early after the department suggested his compromised judgment made continued service inadvisable. Mom anxiety medication to handle the photographers who still stalked their home. Me under investigation by 3 separate committees unable to work active cases, a hero to some and traitor to others. But that was just our family. Multiply it by every agent who'd participated, every family touched by the Brotherhood's web, every citizen whose financial data was exposed. The mathematics of salvation were written in ruined lives. My secure phone buzzed. Director Thornton, as always, straight to business. Priority briefing at 0800. New intelligence requires your expertise. Expertise. 2 years undercover had made me the foremost expert on domestic terror networks. The same knowledge that made me valuable also made me dangerous. Too much understanding of how easily loyalty could be corrupted, how thin the line between protector and threat. The federal building's security recognized me despite my disguises. Fame, or infamy, had destroyed any chance of future undercover work. Agent Phoenix was burned reduced to briefing rooms and analysis, forever barred from the field that had defined me. Phoenix. Thornton greeted me in the SEF. Thank you for coming. The secure room held familiar faces, Liu Park Chen, other survivors of Operation Phoenix. We'd become a brotherhood of our own, bonded by shared sacrifice and public scrutiny. What's the situation? I asked. Liu activated the displays. Brotherhood ideology didn't die with the failed attacks. New cells forming, learning from the original's mistakes. They're calling themselves the Phoenix Patriots. I almost laughed at the irony. My code name appropriated by the enemy turned into a rallying cry for extremism. How bad? 17 cells identified across 12 states, smaller, decentralized, focused on propaganda over direct action. They're winning the information war we're losing. The screens filled with social media posts, forum discussions, encrypted communications. The Brotherhood's martyrdom narrative, spreading like wildfire patriots, framed by deep state families destroyed by government overreach heroes, imprisoned for defending America. They're recruiting from the exposed financial data, Chen added grimly, people whose information was leaked who lost money or reputation. The Brotherhood's final poison is creating its own antidote, victims becoming villains. Counter-narrative campaigns, I suggested. Ineffective, Park reported. Every official statement is seen as propaganda. The harder we push truth, the more they believe lies. Classic information warfare? Paradox. I studied the data, seeing patterns my unique position revealed. They're not recruiting randomly. Look at the demographics: law enforcement families, military veterans, financial sector workers, people like your family, Thornton finished. Yes, we've noticed. They're specifically targeting those connected to Operation Phoenix, using our own methods against us. The violation felt personal because it was. The Brotherhood studying my playbook, corrupting it, turning protection into predation. They'd learned that the best lies contain truth, that the deepest cuts came from trusted hands. There's more, Liu said quietly. Marcus Morrison received recruitment approaches. So did your mother. Your father had 3 separate contacts attempt to turn him. They're trying to flip Operation Phoenix families. My blood chilled. Are they safe? Under surveillance and protection, Thornton assured me. But Phoenix, this is why we need you. You understand their psychology, their methods. Help us prevent Phoenix Patriots from becoming what the Brotherhood was. The request should have been simple: apply my knowledge, save lives, protect America. But sitting in that SCIF, surrounded by evidence of spreading extremism, I faced an uncomfortable truth. I understood the enemy because part of me recognized their grievances, not their methods. Terrorism was inexcusable, but their fury at being dismissed, overlooked, told their concerns didn't matter. I'd lived that for 2 years as Casey Morrison's security guard. The humiliation, the condescension, the casual cruelty of being deemed insufficient. The Brotherhood had weaponized that resentment. The Phoenix Patriots were perfecting it. "I'll need full access," I said finally. "All Operation Phoenix files, psychological profiles, recruitment patterns, and..." I hesitated. "I want to interview Brotherhood prisoners, including Emma." "That could be arranged," Thornton agreed. "But Phoenix, are you prepared for that? Your cousin tried to kill your family. Which is why I need to understand how she got there." I met Thornton's gaze. "We can't fight what we don't comprehend, and I have a unique perspective on transformation, how someone goes from family to threat." The briefing continued for hours, diving deep into intelligence that painted a disturbing picture. The Phoenix Patriots weren't planning another massive attack. They were playing a longer game: recruitment, radicalization, normalization of extremist ideology. Death by 1,000 cuts rather than single catastrophe. As we concluded, Park pulled me aside. "You okay? This can't be easy seeing them use your name." "It's appropriate," I admitted. "Phoenix rises from ashes. They see themselves reborn from the Brotherhood's destruction. Using my code name is psychological warfare. Every mention reminds people that the hero might be the villain." "You're not the villain, Casey." "Aren't I?" I gestured at the screens showing recruitment success among exposed financial victims. 20 million Americans had their privacy violated because I stopped a physical attack but couldn't prevent the digital one. How many will be radicalized by that violation? How many future terrorists am I creating by being the face of their victimization? Park had no answer. In the arithmetic of salvation, unintended consequences compounded infinitely. I left the briefing with encrypted files and heavy purpose. Outside, protesters maintained their vigil, some supporting Operation Phoenix agents, others demanding our prosecution. Both sides certain of their righteousness, neither interested in complexity. My secure phone showed missed calls from Dad. I returned them from the car, activating scrambling protocols that made our conversation sound like weather discussion to any interceptor. "Casey." His voice carried new weight. "I need to see you. It's about the recruitment attempts." "Are you safe?" "For now. But sweetheart, I recognized one of them. From the old days. This goes deeper than anyone knows." We arranged to meet at a secure location, one of many scattered around D.C., for agents whose public visibility made normal life impossible. The weight of his words, "from the old days," suggested connections predating the Brotherhood roots extending into law enforcement itself. The safe house was sterile, functional, devoid of personality. Dad arrived 15 minutes later, checking for surveillance with habits that would never fade. "Talk to me," I said simply. He pulled out a photograph worn from handling. Young officers at academy graduation, faces bright with purpose. I recognized a younger version of Dad, Tommy Brightwater, and others. "Third from left," Dad indicated. "Michael Grayson, my academy roommate. Good cop for 20 years, then got bitter. Budget cuts, politics, watching criminals walk on technicalities. He retired 5 years ago, angry at the system. And he approached me yesterday. Coffee shop, casual meeting, catching up on old times. Then the question started. How did I feel about you lying about the government using family as cover? About Tommy dying for believing in something? The recruitment pattern was elegant. Find the wounded, validate their pain, redirect it toward extremism. Classic Brotherhood tactics refined by Phoenix Patriots, studying our countermoves. What did you tell him, I asked. That my daughter saved lives, that Tommy chose terrorism, that grief doesn't justify murder. Dad's jaw tightened. He said I was blinded by love, that when I saw clearly, he'd be waiting. We need to report this. I already did. But Casey, if Mike Grayson is involved, this isn't just random recruitment. They're targeting specific officers, ones with grievances, connections, credibility, building a network inside law enforcement itself. The implications staggered. Phoenix Patriots weren't just learning from Brotherhood mistakes, they were evolving beyond them. Instead of infiltrating institutions, they were converting those already inside. The enemy wasn't at the gates, but in the halls. There's something else, Dad continued. Mike mentioned others from our generation. Officers who feel betrayed by how things changed, who see your operation as proof the system they served became the enemy. They call themselves the thin blue line, but their interpretation... He shook his head. They think they're saving law enforcement from itself. I processed this, adding it to the intelligence gathered that morning. Multiple recruitment vectors, ideological flexibility, insider conversion. The Phoenix Patriots were becoming everything we'd feared, smarter, subtler, more dangerous, because they believed their own lies. I need names, I said. Everyone Mike mentioned or implied. I made a list. Dad handed over a paper with 12 names. Casey, these are good cops. We're good cops. What happened to them? The same thing that happened to Tommy, that almost happened to Emma. Desperation met opportunity. Resentment met validation. Good people making evil choices because someone convinced them it was righteous. We sat in silence, father and daughter, united by understanding of how thin the margins were. One different choice, one moment of weakness, and Dad could have been on that list. If my cover story had been real, if I'd actually failed, would I have been susceptible to their poison? I'm proud of you, Dad said suddenly. I know I've said it before, but seeing what you've accomplished, understanding the weight you carried alone, I'm so damn proud it hurts. Dad, no, let me finish. At Marcus's wedding, I gave that toast about accepting disappointments. I need you to know, you were never a disappointment. Even when I thought you'd failed, I loved you. He struggled for words. I confused achievement with worth, confused my expectations with your value. That's on me, not you. We all made choices, I said softly. Yours came from love, even if expressed badly. Mine came from duty, even if it caused pain. Neither of us is perfect. No, he agreed, but you're closer than you know. We talked for another hour, sharing intelligence and memories, building bridges over the crater of 2 years' deception. When he left, I sat alone with the names he'd provided, seeing a network of corruption spreading through the very institutions meant to prevent it. The Phoenix Patriots had learned our lessons too well. They knew that trust once broken became a weapon, that heroes could be reframed as villains with the right narrative, that the most dangerous enemies were those who believed their own righteousness. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The encryption pattern was familiar. Emma's lawyer forwarding a message from federal prison. Casey, I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know something. They're still recruiting, still promising desperate people easy answers. And the scariest part, sometimes in the dark, their lies make sense. Please be careful. The next Phoenix might not rise to save anyone. I deleted the message but kept the warning. Emma understood something the committees and critics missed. The line between hero and villain wasn't fixed. It shifted with perspective, circumstance, desperation. The Phoenix Patriots knew this, weaponized it, built their movement on the grave of such distinctions. Outside, D.C. continued its relentless spin of power and politics. Somewhere good people were being recruited by evil wearing the mask of patriotism. Somewhere the next Operation Phoenix was being planned by those who'd studied our success and learned to counter it. And somewhere in the space between salvation and damnation, Agent Phoenix sat with the weight of unintended consequences, knowing that every life saved created ripples that might drown others. The war wasn't over. It had evolved to become personal targeting, not infrastructure, but the human heart. The Phoenix Patriots rose from the Brotherhood's ashes, and I was both their inspiration and opposition. In saving America, I'd created its next threat. The mathematics of salvation had become recursive, each solution birthing new problems, each hero's journey creating tomorrow's villains. But I'd told Congress the truth, I'd do it again. Every time, especially knowing the cost. The Rayburn House Office Building's Committee Room 2154 had seen countless testimonies, but rarely one that commanded such complete attention. 6 months had passed since the Brotherhood attacks, and I sat once again at the witness table. This time, however, I wasn't alone. Beside me sat former Phoenix Patriots who'd abandoned extremism Brotherhood family members advocating for peace, and other Operation Phoenix agents ready to share their perspectives. Agent Morrison, Committee Chairman Williams, began his tone notably warmer than our first encounter. "You've requested this hearing to address what you call the path forward. Please elaborate." I leaned into the microphone, aware that every word would ripple through a nation still grappling with the aftermath. "Mr. Chairman, 6 months ago we prevented a catastrophic attack, but in doing so we created new wounds. Today I'm here to discuss healing." Behind me, the gallery held a cross-section of America Brotherhood victims, Phoenix Patriots who'd surrendered financial breach survivors, and my own family. The diversity of pain and hope in that room was staggering. "The Phoenix Patriots emerged from our success," I continued. "They studied our methods, exploited our mistakes, recruited from those we inadvertently hurt. Traditional counterterrorism won't stop them because they're not traditional terrorists. They're Americans who've lost faith in America." "Are you suggesting we negotiate with extremists?" Representative Jackson interjected, though her hostility had mellowed since our last encounter. "I'm suggesting we understand them, not excuse their actions, but comprehend their journey from citizen to threat." I gestured to a man beside me. "This is Robert Kelly, former Phoenix Patriots cell leader. 3 months ago, he planned to bomb an FBI field office. Today, he's here to explain why he stopped." Kelly, a soft-spoken accountant whose life unraveled when his financial data was exposed, took the microphone with trembling hands. "I lost everything in the breach. My business, my reputation, my family's savings. The Phoenix Patriots gave me someone to blame, a purpose for my anger. Agent Morrison," he glanced at me, "she didn't arrest me when she could have. She talked to me, showed me how my pain was being weaponized, made me realize I was becoming what I claimed to fight against." "How many like you are still out there?" Williams asked. "Thousands," Kelly admitted. "Good people driven to bad choices by desperation, manipulation, and a narrative that validates their grievances. You can't arrest them all, you have to reach them." The hearing proceeded with testimony from others I'd engaged over recent months. Former Brotherhood members who'd realized their ideology led only to destruction, financial victims who'd chosen recovery over revenge, even Emma via secure video link from federal prison sharing how desperation made her vulnerable to recruitment. "The pattern is consistent," I summarized after hours of testimony. "Isolation, validation, escalation, action. The Phoenix Patriots perfected this cycle, but we can break it. Not through surveillance and suppression, but through engagement and alternatives." Lou presented data on our pilot program, Project Reintegration. Instead of treating potential extremists as enemies, we'd approach them as citizens in crisis. Mental health resources for those struggling with financial exposure trauma. Job placement for those whose careers were destroyed. Most importantly, former extremists serving as counselors showing others the path back from radicalization. "Results speak for themselves," Lou reported. 73% reduction in Phoenix Patriot recruitment in pilot areas, 42 voluntary surrenders, 0 attacks in participating communities. "This sounds like you're rewarding terrorism," Jackson challenged. "We're preventing it," I corrected. "Every person we reach before they commit violence is a victory. Every family kept intact is a future secured. The Brotherhood taught us that ideology spreads through human connections. Project Reintegration uses those same connections for healing. The committee digested this as I introduced my next witness, Marcus Morrison, my brother whose journey from victim to advocate had been painful but powerful. 6 months ago, my life imploded. Marcus began, his voice steady, despite visible emotion. My firm's unwitting involvement in terror financing destroyed my reputation. My marriage ended. Everything I'd built crumbled. I had every reason to blame my sister, the government, the system. He paused, gathering himself. The Phoenix Patriots approached me, offered sympathy validation targets for my anger. For a moment, God help me, I listened. Then I remembered Casey risking everything to save strangers. I realized I had a choice: become another bitter victim or help prevent others' radicalization. Marcus now ran a foundation supporting businesses affected by the financial breach, providing resources and counseling to prevent economic desperation from becoming extremist recruitment opportunities. His testimony detailed success stories: companies saved families, stabilized potential radicals, redirected toward productive futures. Agent Morrison. Williams leaned forward. This is all admirable, but what about accountability? The Brotherhood committed horrific crimes. The Phoenix Patriots planned more. Can we really just forgive and forget? No one's suggesting that, I replied firmly. Justice matters. Tommy Brightwater died committing terrorism. That's accountability. Emma serves her sentence while helping us understand recruitment. That's justice with purpose. But for those still on the edge, still deciding whether to step into darkness, we need more than handcuffs. We need hope. Dad took the microphone next his testimony, perhaps the most powerful. The respected police chief who'd lost his best friend to extremism, his daughter to necessary deception, his career to public scandal. Yet here he stood advocating for understanding over vengeance. I spent 30 years believing in simple justice, he said. Good guys, bad guys, clear lines between them. The Brotherhood attacks shattered that simplicity. I learned that good people can make evil choices, that heroes might lie to save lives, that villains might believe they're patriots. Once you see that complexity, you can't unsee it. He described his work with law enforcement officers struggling with the profession's changing nature, those vulnerable to Phoenix Patriots recruitment. By acknowledging their grievances while channeling their passion toward positive reform, he'd prevented 12 officers from joining extremist cells. The thin blue line isn't about us versus them, Dad concluded. It's about protecting everyone, even from themselves. That's what Casey taught me. That's what real service looks like. The hearing stretched into evening as more witnesses testified. Each story added nuance to a narrative that desperately needed it. The Phoenix Patriots weren't monsters but misdirected citizens. Operation Phoenix agents weren't deep state conspirators but dedicated protectors. The Brotherhood's legacy wasn't just destruction but inadvertent revelation of societal vulnerabilities. Agent Morrison, Chairman Williams, said as we neared conclusion, "You're asking us to fund programs that treat potential terrorists as victims needing help. In this political climate, that's a hard sell." Harder than explaining why we let preventable attacks happen, I countered. Mr. Chairman, we can spend billions on surveillance and suppression playing eternal whack-a-mole with evolving threats, or we can invest in addressing root causes, breaking recruitment cycles, turning potential enemies into allies, which sounds more effective. What about the real threats, Jackson pressed? Those already committed to violence? We stop them, I said simply. Project Reintegration doesn't replace traditional counterterrorism. It supplements it. We still arrest active plotters, still maintain vigilance, but we also recognize that today's radical might be tomorrow's counselor if given the chance to step back from the edge. The committee called for recess, and I found myself in the hallway with fellow Operation Phoenix agents. Park Chen Thompson, all scarred by our success, all committed to preventing others' radicalization. Think they'll approve funding? Thompson asked. They'll have to, I replied. The alternative is watching Phoenix Patriots metastasize into something worse. The Brotherhood taught us that ignoring grievances doesn't eliminate them. It weaponizes them. When the hearing reconvened, Director Thornton presented classified intelligence. Phoenix Patriot cells were evolving, connecting with international extremist networks, planning coordinated actions that would make the Brotherhood look amateur. Without intervention, we faced a decade of escalating domestic terrorism. But every cell we've engaged through Project Reintegration has dissolved, she emphasized. Every leader we've reached has become an advocate against violence. The program works because it addresses the human element traditional enforcement misses. As the hearing concluded, Williams delivered the committee's preliminary assessment. Agent Morrison, you and your colleagues have presented a compelling case, treating potential extremists as humans deserving help rather than enemies requiring destruction, challenges our assumptions. But perhaps our assumptions need challenging. He paused, looking at his fellow committee members. We'll recommend initial funding for Project Reintegration expansion, but understand this is controversial. You'll face opposition from those who prefer simple solutions to complex problems. We've faced worse, I said, thinking of 2 years undercover of family betrayals of public crucifixion and gradual redemption. Controversy is a small price for prevention. As the hearing adjourned, I stood with my unlikely coalition of former extremists, reformed agents, and healing families. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Every success would face scrutiny. Every failure would fuel opposition. But the alternative, endless cycles of radicalization and retaliation, was unacceptable. Outside the committee room, reporters waited with predictable questions. But this time, I wasn't alone. Marcus stood with me. Dad flanked my other side. Former Phoenix Patriots and Brotherhood defectors added their voices to mine. We told a different story than 6 months ago. Not just prevention of catastrophe, but possibility of redemption. Agent Morrison, a young reporter asked, do you really believe extremists can change? I thought of Emma in prison teaching authorities about recruitment while earning her degree. Of Robert Kelly, the accountant, who'd almost become a bomber, now counseling others away from that path. Of the 12 police officers Dad had saved from radicalization. Of my own transformation from Casey Morrison failed cop to Phoenix National Security Guardian. I believe people are more than their worst moments, I answered. I believe the same desperation that drives someone toward extremism can be redirected toward healing. And I believe that belief is our best weapon against future threats. The coverage that night was mixed but meaningful. Some outlets praised the innovative approach to counterterrorism. Others warned of coddling potential threats. But the conversation had shifted from simple heroics and villainy to complex realities of modern security. My secure phone showed messages from across the country. Project Reintegration pilots reporting successes, former extremists requesting speaking opportunities, citizens asking how to help identify and redirect potential radicals in their communities. Lou called with updated data. Phoenix Patriots recruitment down 60% in areas with media coverage of today's hearing. People are responding to the message that there's a way back from the edge. That night, I had dinner with my parents for the first time in months without security details. The restaurant was quiet, our conversation finally approaching normal. We were different people than 2 years ago, scarred wiser, but still family. I'm proud of you, Mom said, echoing Dad's earlier words but adding her own spin. Not just for stopping the attacks or the medals or the programs. I'm proud that you found a way to make meaning from pain. The Brotherhood tried to destroy America through division, Dad added. You're healing it through connection. That's police work at its finest. Serving and protecting even those who don't realize they need it yet. As we parted ways, I reflected on the strange journey from undercover agent to public advocate, from preventing one catastrophe to addressing its root causes. The Phoenix Patriots had chosen their name to mock my code sign, but inadvertently revealed a truth from the ashes of destruction. Something new could rise. Project Reintegration wasn't perfect. Not every extremist could be reached. Not every grievance could be addressed. Not every wound could heal. But it offered something the cycle of violence and retaliation never could hope. 6 months after preventing the Brotherhood attacks, I'd learned that saving lives was just the beginning. The harder work was saving souls, those driven to extremism by pain, fear, and skillful manipulation. Every success story, every voluntary surrender, every family kept whole was a victory against future violence. The war on terror had evolved into something more complex, a battle for hearts and minds fought not with weapons, but with compassion, understanding, and the radical belief that today's enemy could become tomorrow's ally. As I returned to my apartment, my Real One security finally deeming it safe, I found a package waiting. Inside a simple note, "Thank you for showing me the way back," a former Phoenix patriot. No name, no details, just acknowledgement that someone had stepped away from darkness because we'd offered light. In the arithmetic of salvation, that single prevented radicalization might ripple outward, saving lives we'd never know about. The Brotherhood had failed in their attacks, but succeeded in teaching us a crucial lesson. The most dangerous enemies were those we created through neglect, dismissal, and failure to address legitimate grievances. By acknowledging that lesson and acting on it, we could transform their legacy from destruction to prevention. Phoenix had risen from the ashes not as the agent who'd prevented catastrophe, but as the advocate working to ensure such prevention was never again necessary. The mathematics of salvation had become an equation of redemption. Each former extremist reached multiplying into communities, protected families, preserved futures, secured. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Extremist evolution continued, grievances multiplied, and the simple solution of force would always tempt those who preferred clarity to complexity. But tonight, I allowed myself a moment of hope. We'd proven that the cycle could be broken, that Phoenix patriots could become productive citizens, that understanding trumped suppression in preventing radicalization. It wasn't a complete victory. Those didn't exist in counterterrorism. But it was progress, and progress was its own form of salvation. The phone rang Liu with updates, Marcus with Foundation Business Dad with new intervention successes. The work continued, would always continue. But now it felt different. Less like standing against a tide and more like redirecting a river. Agent Phoenix had prevented an attack. Advocate Phoenix was preventing the next generation of attackers. In the end, that might be the greater victory. Not just saving lives once, but creating a system that saved them continuously. The arithmetic had changed. Where once I calculated casualties prevented, now I counted souls redeemed. The numbers were smaller, but the impact profound. Each former extremist who chose healing over hatred was a victory that echoed through generations. As night settled over D.C., I thought about everyone touched by these events. The 30 million who'd never know how close they'd come to disaster. The thousands whose exposed financial data had made them vulnerable to recruitment. The hundreds who'd stepped to the edge of extremism before being pulled back. All connected by invisible threads of cause and effect, action and consequence, salvation, and its complex costs. The Brotherhood's defeat hadn't ended our story. It had begun a new chapter, one written in prevention rather than reaction, understanding rather than suppression, hope rather than fear. Tomorrow the work would continue, former extremists to counsel potential radicals, to redirect communities, to strengthen against recruitment. The Phoenix Patriots thought they'd appropriated my symbol for destruction. Instead, they'd reminded us that resurrection was possible, that from the ashes of extremism could rise citizens committed to preventing others from making their mistakes. In saving America from the Brotherhood, we'd learned to save Americans from themselves. That was the true Phoenix rising, Not just the agent who'd stopped an attack, but the movement that prevented future ones through compassion intervention and the radical belief that everyone deserved a chance to choose better. The mathematics of salvation had evolved from simple subtraction, lives saved minus costs incurred, to complex multiplication. Each intervention created ripples. Each success inspired others. Each former extremist who shared their story prevented unknown numbers from starting down that dark path. As I prepared for sleep, one last message arrived. From Director Thornton, congressional approval confirmed. Project Reintegration receives full funding. Your vision becomes national policy. Congratulations, Phoenix. You've saved more lives than you know. I smiled at the darkness. 2 years ago, I'd accepted an undercover assignment to prevent terrorism. Tonight, I led a movement to prevent terrorists from being created in the first place. The evolution from reaction to prevention, from enforcement to engagement, from Agent Phoenix to something more, that was the real victory. The Brotherhood had sought to destroy America through infrastructure attacks. They'd failed. The Phoenix Patriots had tried to destroy it through recruitment and radicalization. They were failing too, not through force, but through offering better alternatives to those they targeted. In the end, salvation came not from the dramatic raids or prevented attacks, but from the quiet work of reaching one soul at a time, showing them that their pain had purpose beyond destruction, that their grievances could fuel positive change rather than violence. Agent Phoenix had risen, evolved, and transformed. From the ashes of deception and violence had emerged truth and healing. The mathematics of salvation continued their complex calculations, but now the equation included redemption. And redemption multiplied across a nation of wounded souls might just save us all. The White House Rose Garden was bathed in perfect October sunlight as I stood with 47 other recipients of the Medal of Valor. 6 months had passed since Project Reintegration became national policy, a year since the Brotherhood attacks that changed everything. The journey from undercover agent to public advocate had led here to the nation's highest recognition for civilian law enforcement. But I barely noticed the cameras, the dignitaries, or even the president approaching with the medal. My attention was fixed on the audience section where my family sat in the front row. Mom, tears streaming down her face, but smiling broadly. Marcus, his business rebuilt and reputation restored, holding the hand of his new girlfriend, someone who knew his full story and chose him anyway. And Dad, in his dress uniform despite retirement, looking at me with pride that still felt surreal after years of disappointment. Special Agent Casey Morrison. The president began his voice carrying across the garden. For exceptional valor in preventing the largest domestic terrorist attack in our nation's history, for innovative approaches to counter-extremism that have saved countless lives, and for personal sacrifice in service to your country, I present you with the Medal of Valor. As the medal settled around my neck, its weight felt lighter than the burdens I'd carried. The applause washed over me, but I heard individual voices within it. Chen clapping for his fellow Agent Park, whistling despite protocol. Thompson cheering the mentor who'd guided him through fire. Agent Morrison has redefined what it means to protect and serve, the president continued. Her evolution from preventing an attack to preventing attackers represents the best of American innovation and compassion. Project Reintegration has reached over 12,000 at-risk individuals, preventing an estimated 47 attacks through intervention rather than enforcement. She proved that our greatest strength against extremism isn't our weapons, but our humanity. After the ceremony, the reception buzzed with an energy different from 6 months ago. Where once there had been division and suspicion, now there was cautious hope. Former Phoenix Patriots who'd gone through reintegration mingled with federal agents. Brotherhood family members advocating for peace spoke with attack survivors. The painful past hadn't been forgotten, but it was being transformed into a purposeful future. Phoenix. Director Thornton approached with someone I hadn't expected to see. There's someone who wanted to thank you personally. Sophie Emma's daughter, now 7 years old, stood holding her grandmother's hand. The last time I'd seen her, she'd been a terrified hostage. Now she looked healthy, adjusted, even happy, despite her mother's imprisonment. "Aunt Casey," she said shyly, "Mommy wanted me to give you this." She handed me a hand-drawn card. Inside, Emma's careful printing, "Thank you for showing me that redemption was possible even from behind bars. My testimony has helped prevent 17 recruitments. I'll never undo my wrongs, but maybe I can prevent others. Sophie is proud that Mommy is helping people now. That's because of you. E." I knelt to Sophie's level. "Your mom is very brave to help others learn from her mistakes. And you're brave too for being so strong through all of this. Grammy says being brave means doing good even when bad things happened," Sophie replied. "Like you did, like Mommy is trying to do now." As they walked away, I reflected on the strange paths of redemption. Emma would serve her full sentence. Justice demanded that, but she'd become one of our most effective counter-recruitment voices. Her story of desperation leading to terrible choices resonated with those walking similar edges. "Quite a journey from security guard to national hero," a familiar voice said behind me. I turned to find Robert Kelly, the former Phoenix Patriot accountant who'd almost bombed an FBI office. Now he wore a Project Reintegration badge, having become one of our most successful intervention counselors. "Quite a journey from accountant to almost bomber to counselor," I replied. "How many this month?" 14 interventions, 12 successful redirects, he reported proudly, including 3 who were days away from action. Showed them my story, connected them with resources, gave them alternatives to violence. One starting community college next month. Another reconciled with his family. The third is volunteering with financial literacy programs, turning his breach trauma into helping others avoid financial vulnerability. These were the victories that mattered now. Not the dramatic raids or prevented attacks, but the quiet redemptions playing out across America. Each former extremist who chose healing created ripples of prevention we were only beginning to understand. Agent Morrison. A young woman approached nervously. "I'm Sarah Walsh, reporter with the Washington Post. I've been covering Project Reintegration for 6 months. Could I ask you a few questions?" I recognized her byline. She'd written some of the most balanced coverage of our work, avoiding both blind praise and cynical dismissal. "Of course." "When you were undercover, did you imagine it would lead to this? From preventing one attack to transforming how we approach extremism?" "I imagined survival," I answered honestly. "Getting through each day without blowing cover, gathering intelligence, hoping we'd stop the attack. I never imagined the aftermath would become more important than the operation itself." Some critics say Project Reintegration coddles potential terrorists. How do you respond? I'd invite them to spend a day with our counselors, watch former extremists share their stories with those on the edge, see families reunited, communities, strengthened attacks, prevented through compassion rather than force. It's not coddling, it's strategic. Every person we redirect is one less recruit for extremist networks. And the cost congressional reports show the program's expense rivaling traditional enforcement. "What's the cost of not acting?" I countered. "The Brotherhood attacks, if successful, would have caused billions in damage and thousands of deaths. Each prevented attack saves not just lives, but the social fabric extremism tears. Yes, intervention is expensive. It's also exponentially cheaper than the alternative." She asked more questions, probing the complexities of balancing justice with redemption, security with compassion. I answered as honestly as possible, acknowledging our failures alongside successes. Project Reintegration wasn't perfect. We'd lost people we'd tried to help, seen some return to extremism despite our efforts. But the overall trajectory was undeniable. Fewer attacks, less recruitment, more Americans choosing healing over hatred. As the interview concluded, I noticed Dad in deep conversation with several young officers. Since embracing the complexity of modern law enforcement, he'd become a sought-after speaker at academies, teaching the next generation that strength included understanding that protection meant more than punishment. Then, Casey Marcus waved me over to where he stood with several business leaders. I want you to meet the founding members of the Financial Resilience Alliance. The group represented companies affected by the Brotherhood's financial attacks who'd chosen to transform victimization into action. They funded financial literacy programs in vulnerable communities, provided emergency assistance to breach victims, and worked to eliminate the economic desperation that made people susceptible to extremist recruitment. Your brother's leadership has been instrumental, one CEO told me. He showed us that our choice wasn't between being victims or vigilantes. We could be advocates for prevention. Marcus had found his own redemption path, turning his firm's unwitting involvement in terror financing into expertise in preventing such manipulation. His story, the successful businessman whose life imploded but who rebuilt with purpose, resonated with other professionals touched by extremism's ripples. I learned from the best, Marcus said, squeezing my shoulder. My sister showed me that our worst moments don't define us. Our response to them does. The afternoon wound down with countless similar conversations. Each person present had been touched by the events of a year ago, as victim, perpetrator, preventer, or family. But instead of letting those touches become permanent wounds, most had chosen transformation. Liu pulled me aside with statistics that validated what we were seeing anecdotally. Domestic extremism down 42% nationally, recruitment rates at historical lows. And here's the amazing part. Voluntary surrenders up 300%. People are turning themselves in because they know they'll find help, not just handcuffs. What about the holdouts? I asked. The Phoenix Patriots who won't engage. Shrinking but hardening, she admitted. Maybe 800 nationwide who've rejected intervention. They're more dangerous because they're more desperate, but they're also increasingly isolated. Even other extremists are choosing reintegration over resistance. It was the best we could hope for. Not perfection, but progress. There would always be those who chose violence over healing, who preferred simple hatred to complex understanding. But they were becoming the exception rather than the rule. As the reception ended, my secure phone buzzed with a message that made me smile. From Thompson, now leading his own intervention team. Just prevented attack number 50. Kid reminded me of myself before you showed me the way. Paying it forward, Phoenix. Thank you. 50 attacks prevented by one agent I'd mentored. Multiply that by hundreds of intervention specialists nationwide, and the mathematics of salvation became staggering. We weren't just stopping violence. We were transforming the entire ecosystem that created it. Ready to go. Mom appeared at my elbow. Your father's taking us all to dinner. Somewhere fancy to celebrate his daughter, the national hero. I'm not a hero, Mom. I'm just someone who saved 30 million lives, prevented dozens more attacks, and transformed how America handles extremism. She smiled. Sweetheart, if that's not heroism, I don't know what is. The family dinner was at Dad's favorite steakhouse, the same place he'd once brought fellow officers to celebrate big cases. Now he brought his family to celebrate something bigger, the evolution from enforcement to engagement, from reaction to prevention. A toast. Dad raised his glass. To Casey, who taught an old cop that the thin blue line isn't about separation but connection. To Marcus, who proved that victimization can become advocacy. To all of us for learning that families can survive anything if they choose understanding over assumption. To the future, Marcus added, where preventing extremism matters more than punishing it. Where people like Emma get second chances to do good. Where security means helping people before they need stopping. We clinked glasses, a family transformed by trauma into something stronger. The scars remained. They always would. Dad still grieved Tommy's betrayal and death. Marcus still dealt with business complications from the money laundering. I still carried the weight of lives ended and lies told. But scar tissue we'd learned was stronger than unmarked skin. "So what's next?" Mom asked. "The ceremony's over, project reintegration is established. What does Agent Phoenix do now?" I'd been wrestling with that question myself. The undercover work was impossible now, my face too known. Traditional enforcement felt limited after experiencing intervention's power, but Director Thornton had made an offer that intrigued me. The FBI's creating a new position I shared. Director of Extremism, Prevention, and Reintegration, overseeing all programs, nationally developing new approaches, training the next generation. They want me to lead it. Bureau leadership. Dad's eyes widened. "Casey, that's executive level. You'd be one of the youngest in FBI history." "I haven't decided yet," I admitted. "It means leaving field work completely, becoming a bureaucrat fighting for funding and dealing with politics. But it also means shaping how America handles extremism for decades to come." "You'll take it," Marcus said confidently, "because you've never backed down from hard, necessary work. Because someone needs to ensure Project Reintegration survives changing administrations and shifting priorities. Because you're not just Phoenix anymore. You're the architect of how we rise from extremism's ashes." He was right, of course. The decision had already been made in my heart. Fieldwork had been my identity for years, but preventing the need for fieldwork had become my calling. Leading that effort nationally, despite the bureaucratic headaches, was the natural evolution. That night, I stood on my apartment's balcony looking out over DC's lights. Somewhere in those lights were former extremists rebuilding their lives, potential recruits choosing different paths, families staying whole because someone intervened before ideology fractured them. My phone showed dozens of messages. Congratulations on the medal updates from intervention teams' requests for guidance. The work never stopped, but its nature had transformed. Where once I'd hunted threats, now I prevented them from emerging. Where once I'd arrested extremists, now I helped create systems that made extremism less appealing than alternatives. A final message arrived, this one from an unknown number. "Agent Morrison, you don't know me, but you saved my life. Not from a bomb or attack, but from becoming someone who would plant them. Your story, your evolution, your belief that people could choose better. It reached me when I was close to the edge. Today I'm starting graduate school in conflict resolution. I wanted you to know that Phoenix rises not just as one agent, but in everyone you've inspired to choose light over darkness. Thank you." No signature, but none needed. They were legion now. The saved who became savers, the redirected who redirected others. The Phoenix metaphor had transcended its original meaning. We all rose from ashes of various kinds: trauma, extremism, deception, failure. What mattered was how we rose and who we lifted with us. I went inside and called Director Thornton. "I'll take the position." "I knew you would," she said warmly. "Congratulations, Director Morrison. Your first briefing is Monday. Fair warning. The challenges of bureaucracy make undercover work look simple." "I'm ready," I assured her. And I was. Ready to fight different battles with different weapons. Ready to prove that America's strength lay not in its ability to destroy enemies, but in its capacity to transform them. Ready to lead a revolution in how we thought about security extremism and the thin lines between us and them. The Medal of Valor sat on my dresser, its gold-catching lamplight. But the real medal was the message from the unknown, almost extremist, the statistics Liu had shared, the transformations I'd witnessed. Those were the decorations that mattered, lives saved not through violence but through vigilance of a different kind. Tomorrow I'd begin my new role. New challenges, new politics, new frustrations, but also new opportunities to expand what we'd built to save people before they needed saving to transform American security from reactive to preventive. Agent Phoenix had completed her mission. Director Morrison was just beginning hers. The mathematics of salvation continued evolving, adding new variables of hope, redemption, and the radical belief that today's enemy could become tomorrow's ally. As I prepared for bed, one last thought occurred. At Marcus's wedding, Dad had toasted children who made their parents proud every single day, emphasizing my failures. Now, a year later, I'd exceeded his highest hopes in ways none of us could have imagined. The irony wasn't lost on me. In pretending to be a disappointment, I'd become something greater than anyone's expectations. In saving strangers, I'd learned to save family. In preventing one attack, I discovered how to prevent the next generation of attackers. Phoenix had risen indeed, not just from the ashes of the Brotherhood's defeat, but from the ashes of every assumption about security extremism and the possibility of redemption. The fire that consumes also purifies. The ending that destroys also creates space for new beginnings. Tomorrow, those new beginnings would continue. More interventions, more preventions, more proof that America's greatest strength was its capacity for reinvention. I'd been reinvented myself, from Casey the failure to Phoenix the agent to Morrison the director. If I could transform, anyone could. That was the ultimate triumph. Not the medal or the ceremony or the recognition. It was the knowledge that transformation was possible, that cycles could be broken, that from the ashes of our worst moments could rise our best selves. The Brotherhood had tried to destroy America through infrastructure attacks. They'd failed. The Phoenix Patriots had tried to destroy it through recruitment and radicalization. They were failing too. Not through superior firepower or surveillance, but through superior compassion. Through the radical act of seeing enemies as potential allies, extremists, as citizens in crisis violence, as a symptom of deeper wounds that could be healed. In the end, we'd saved America not by defeating its enemies, but by transforming them, by proving that redemption was possible, that prevention trumped punishment, that the phoenix rising from ashes could lift others with its wings. The story that began with lies and deception ended with truth and transformation. The agent who'd sacrificed family for strangers had learned to save both. The nation that had nearly fallen to extremism had discovered how to convert extremists. Mathematics had always been my framework for understanding salvation. Lives saved, costs, calculated outcomes, measured. But the final equation was simpler than I'd imagined. Every person reached multiplied into communities protected. Every intervention created ripples of prevention. Every former extremist who chose healing inspired others to do the same. The math worked because it was human, not cold calculation, but warm connection, not abstract numbers, but real lives, not theoretical prevention, but practical redemption. Phoenix had risen. America had risen. From the ashes of near catastrophe had emerged a new understanding of security, a new approach to extremism, a new hope for breaking cycles that had seemed eternal. Tomorrow the work would continue. New threats would emerge requiring new responses. But tonight, surrounded by medals and messages by family rebuilt and futures secured, I allowed myself to feel what I'd denied for so long: pride. Not in the medals or recognition, but in the transformation. Mine, my family's, my country's. We'd proven that the worst moments don't define us. Our response to them does. And our response had been to transform destruction into construction, to convert endings into beginnings, to rise from ashes stronger and more compassionate than before. That was the ultimate triumph. Not victory over enemies, but transformation of them. Not preventing one catastrophe, but preventing the need for such prevention. Not saving lives once, but creating systems that saved them continuously. Agent Phoenix had completed her mission. Director Morrison was beginning hers. And somewhere between the two, Casey Morrison, daughter, sister, American, had found her purpose in the place where salvation met redemption, where mathematics became human, where the phoenix rising lifted all who chose to grasp its wings. The story ended where it began, with family, with choice, with the thin line between who we are and who we might become. But now that line was a bridge, not a barrier, a path to transformation, not a wall of separation. And on that bridge, phoenix after phoenix rose, each lifting the next, until the sky filled with wings of redemption, and the ashes below forgot they'd ever been anything but fertile ground for new beginnings. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt overlooked or underestimated only to prove your worth when it mattered most, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to keep a secret to protect others? Have you watched someone transform from enemy to ally, or experienced that transformation yourself? Share your own stories of redemption, of family reconciliation, of choosing difficult paths for greater good. Let's discuss how we can all be phoenixes in our own ways, rising from whatever ashes life has given us. If you found value in Casey's journey from perceived failure to recognized hero, please like this story and share it with others who might need reminding that our worst moments don't define us. Our response to them does. Subscribe to hear more stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances, of families torn apart and rebuilt stronger, of the thin lines between perception and reality that shape all our lives. Thank you for joining me on this journey through deception, salvation, and redemption. May you find your own phoenix moment, and may you lift others when you rise. Remember, sometimes the greatest heroes are hidden in plain sight, dismissed by those who should know them best. Sometimes salvation comes wrapped in sacrifice, and sometimes the person everyone counts as a failure is secretly saving the world. Until next time, keep rising.